Morning, Glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt inside the California studios of the Hugh Hewitt Show. If you were expecting an eye patch this morning, you're disappointed if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. I got to the good doctor's surgery yesterday and was told that the nurse, who had told me it was my eyelid biopsy that needed to be sliced and diced, I found out it's my eyebrow biopsy. So you can't even see it on this thing, which is great. So I'm fine, and a little bit. The other couple of slices and dice. It's my dermatological weight loss program. Every 4 months I have them cut off a quarter pound or so, and I lose weight over the years. Don't be an Irish Catholic lifeguard in the 70s. That's my advice to everyone. That was before sunscreen and zinc oxide only worked on the nose. So I'm back. I'm fine. We had a great time at the Nixon Library last night with Bret Baier, author of To Rescue a Republican, of course, Fox News anchor. I looked out at the sea of, I think we had close to 500 people there, and I said, oh my gosh, Bret's going to be here all night signing books. So I kept it to a crisp 45 minutes of interview and questions, and he's magnificent. It's a magnificent book. Enjoyed talking with him. But a little bit of sleep, but I want to begin by wishing my friend Dennis Prager well. I did not know until I got home last night that Dennis had announced on his radio show, because I had been over at the dermatologist and then taken a little bit of a rest before going late with Bret, that he has COVID. I did tell you yesterday my daughter and 3 grandkids have COVID. My daughter's a breakout case, and my grandkids are fine. They have colds and sniffles and sore throats and that sort of thing. As with most children, blessedly, they are unaffected. Dennis is doing well, according to my friend Tom Tradup, who checked in with him yesterday afternoon, just tired. He made his announcement on his show yesterday. It's been mischaracterized in a lot of places, so I just want to play it for you. Cut number 20, Dennis Prager on his radio show yesterday.
Okay, everybody, all good. I'm broadcasting from my home because I'm not going into the station as I have COVID. I was tested positive last week, and I have been steadily improving. At no point was I in danger of hospitalization. I have received monoclonal antibodies. That's Regeneron. I have, of course, for years, a year and a half, not years, been taking hydroxychloroquine from the beginning with zinc. I've taken Z-Pak, the erythromycin, as the Zelenko protocol would have it. I have taken Ivermectin. I have done what a person should do if one is not going to get vaccinated. It is infinitely preferable to have natural immunity than vaccine immunity. And that is what I hoped for the entire time. Hence, I so engaged with strangers, constantly hugging them, taking photos with them, knowing that I was making myself very susceptible to getting COVID, which is indeed, as bizarre as it sounded, what I wanted, in the hope that I would achieve natural immunity and be taken care of by therapeutics. That is exactly what has happened. It should have happened to the great majority of Americans. The number of deaths in this country owing to COVID is a scandal, which one day will be clear to Americans. The opposition to therapeutics on the part of the CDC is owing to the corruption of the belief in the value of vaccine and only vaccine. Whether it is because of all the money that goes into the CDC from the pharmaceutical companies, or a simple unquestioning faith in vaccines, or both, only God knows.
I am very, very happy that Dennis feels better. He was out hula hooping yesterday afternoon. Got a video of that from Susan. He's surrounded by empty Cheeto bags, so I know his appetite is fine. And Dennis is an old and dear friend of 30 years. You know somebody's a friend when you're invited to their roast. So I got to roast Dennis. I look forward to the next time we do that. We do that every 10 years for Dennis, whether he wants us to or not. But he's doing wonderfully well, and that is good news. His statement has been mischaracterized everywhere, and so I let you hear it for yourself. Dennis and I had a disagreement about this. We've talked about it often. I'm double vaccinated with a booster. I urge everyone to get a vaccine. Not because Colin Powell is a case study in the danger of breakout infections or the danger of the disease. As the Washington Post reports this morning, Colin Powell had been treated for a cancer that severely impairs the immune system, lowering the coronavirus vaccine effectiveness. Because of my daughter's experience, she has a head cold and coughs a little bit, but she's able to take care of her family while her husband is away on military duty. And she is, as all moms do, pushing on with a mild COVID case, not a severe COVID case. I believe in the efficacy of the vaccine and the booster. Dennis believes in the efficacy of therapeutics. I believe mine is the better argument. But Dennis, God provide that he be fine, and he is acting like he's going to be fine. And our argument will continue on forever about whether vaccines are preferable to waiting upon the therapeutics and then getting natural immunity. But he's been very responsible in being alert to and ready to respond and going into quarantine as soon as he develops symptoms. I want people to understand that. I was with Dennis probably 2 weeks ago, and he was being very, very responsible. Dennis is a great, great American. In fact, the one thing he'd want you to do is contribute to my Alliance Defending Freedom banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Not really. It would be a wonderful thing as a show of support. All of you went to DennisPrager.com and contributed to his Alliance Defending Freedom banner today, as opposed to mine. Because Dennis and I are always a little bit competitive about these things. We always think our audiences are preferable to each other. Now, I have more affiliates, but at certain times of the day, he has more listeners because my signal is compromised in the morning in some areas, and his signal is not. And we both beat Gallagher completely into the ground on almost everything. But Dennis and I have been going at this for 30 years, and there's just a lot of funny Hugh and Dennis stories. But I am glad that he is feeling better. He is fatigued, and he is recovering. Do listen to his show today. Call him up, give him a thumbs up. But he won't dare say, and if you support me and you support what I've been working on for all these years, truth, candor, clarity before agreement. I gave him that, by the way. He should pay me a royalty on that clarity before agreement. Go over to DennisPrager.com and contribute to one of his favorite causes, Alliance Defending Freedom. As I said, Colin Powell in the Washington Post revealed when I announced it yesterday on the show, I was unaware that he had been immunocompromised, and that's a key part of the story. Not the whole story, but part of the story. The other rundown, very, very quickly in the 3 minutes before: stripped naked, beaten, forced to shout Viva Fidel inside Cuba's crackdown on dissent. It's been 100 days since Cubans marched for their freedom, and the tales of repression and torture inside of Cuba's smaller but no less lethal gulag are in the Washington Post today. Please keep them in your prayers. China's magnesium shortage threatens global car industry. Wonderful. Japan Economic Security Minister warns on chip industry survival in that country, according to the Financial Times, as was the last story on the magnesium. Japan is aware that China is moving to take control completely of computer chips, and therefore they've got to step up. Brussels, because bureaucrats got a bureaucrat, are vowing to punish Poland for challenging the supremacy of European Union law. In an effort to again persuade no one to take it seriously, the bureaucrats of Brussels are doing whatever they can to drive yet another member state out as they drove out Britain. The FDA is nearing approval for mixing and matching COVID-19 booster shots, they're dangerously close to common sense at this point. In an article in the Wall Street Journal this morning, Felicia Schwartz reports, it doesn't really matter. Take Moderna or Pfizer. That's what the FDA is going to say, something I probably would have said like 6 months ago, but then again, the FDA moves on bureaucrat time. Very nice story on the First Lady this morning. Jill Biden paid a surprise visit to the woman who helped her regain faith in God. I've tweeted that out. I'd like you to read it. North Korea, however, fired the first ballistic missile of recent memory off its East Coast Tuesday. It's its fifth weapons test in recent weeks, the first ballistic missile test. And thank you, President Biden, for not maintaining the deterrence that somehow Donald Trump had established. Texas passed a sports ban for transgender students, the fifth such state to do so. Starbucks workers are seeking a union. Zillow is not buying any more homes. Ahmaud Arbery's murder trial begins in Atlanta. Donald Trump is preventing records from being released. Good for him. Executive privilege matters. And in Great Britain, the Amos killing The terror suspect, it's an Islamist fanatic, had made a false appointment with the member of parliament before he killed him. And we are on the brink of a massive civil war in Lebanon. I will tell you more about that when I come back, America. Go nowhere. You're listening to the Tuesday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Que lo siento mucho.
And that's the only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God calls you to the cross. Don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
CNN is going crazy. Joe Rogan called them out the other day. Now they're sitting there trying to lie and say, no, we never called Ivermectin a horse dewormer. So we'll play a couple audio clips for you because they sure as heck did. And quite frankly, in my opinion, they're complicit in the deaths. And I don't say this lightly. I don't say it just because I want to say something that's shocking on air. I sincerely believe it. I believe Facebook. I believe a lot of these big tech companies. I believe CNN, MSNBC. A lot of these people are complicit in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans. I really do. For not getting the word out on therapeutics.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Over 200 million Americans have gotten at least one shot. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us. So please do the right thing.
Now you're being patient again. We shouldn't be divided on the vaccine mandate. Now you're back to that because guess what? Your obstinance isn't working. Your mandates aren't working. Are there going to be booster mandates? Have you noticed nobody's talked about a booster mandate? Does a mandate only apply to round one? What about round two or three? It is the left who has politicized COVID. Not us.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
How a million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
This White House has absolutely no idea what is happening in America. It is completely divorced from reality, devoid of any understanding. And you know, they always say that the organization reflects the leader. Well, they've got a feckless, pathetic, completely out to lunch leader, and that has completely permeated this White House, if you can call it that.
So at this point, it's hard to imagine how much worse the situation could get. In that case, the question I always return to, and you are a guy who's worked on so many campaigns, not just in the White House. Your political sense is fine-tuned.
In a race where Biden won by 10 points.
But hang on, Boris.
Okay.
Boris, it's not just that, you know, Youngkin has a shot. Did you ever think that Terry McAuliffe would actually publicly state that the Democrat president is the reason that he might lose Virginia?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. We're going to lean on a lot of the White House clips today. We're going to lean on Jen Psaki in what is the most unserious comment from the White House press podium I think I have really ever heard, because she did not intend it to be lighthearted. She intended it to be a serious response to the Sputnik moment that occurred over the weekend when we learned that China had launched a hypersonic on a Long March missile into space that had orbited the planet under control of a guidance and landed within a couple of dozen miles after moving it up to 5 times the speed of sound, as hypersonics are wont to do. We are very, very, very far behind in this race. I'll talk with Senator Cotton about it. Asked about this scoop from the Financial Times, Jen Psaki said this, cut number 17.
Can you comment on reports that China tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile over this summer to the surprise of U.S. officials? Are these accurate, and do these raise concerns about China's nuclear capability?
Well, I know Secretary Austin, I should say, was asked this question this morning and addressed it, but I'm not going to comment on the specific report. I can say and would echo what he said, which is, generally speaking, we've made clear our concern about the military capabilities that the PRC continues to pursue. And we have been consistent in our approach with China. We welcome stiff competition, but we do not want that competition to veer into conflict, and that is certainly what we convey privately as well.
We welcome stiff competition. Now, even a rookie before the podium would ever say about nuclear weapons and hypersonics, we welcome a stiff competition. I mean, we really don't. We're going to have to engage in one. It's going to be another nuclear arms race like that which crippled and ultimately destroyed the Soviet Union because Ronald Reagan launched it. And we're going to have to develop concentrated energy weapons to deter and be able to destroy the hypersonics. And we're going to have to focus on funding that R&D and our own hypersonic fleet. It is not something we welcome in the least, as Kurt Schleicher pointed out online. This is the least serious thing she could have possibly said. She might have said, I don't want to comment on that, I'll leave it to the defense officials. But to say we welcome stiff competition, we don't want it to veer into conflict. It's a conflict, Jen Psaki, and we don't welcome it. No rational person welcomes it. Dr. Strangelove Psaki. And it was a weird day yesterday. We also had Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm easily being misinterpreted here. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and assume she just doesn't know how to talk to the press after 8 years as governor and a couple of tours in D.C. Cut number 5.
You know, we've got a global problem, and China is a big contributor to that. We are too. But we don't have much moral authority to say, you should be doing this if we're not taking action and deploying the technology that we need to deploy.
Now, what she's talking about is the idiotic idea that we can't tell China to stop building antiquated coal-fired plants and the other environmental degradations that they engage on, or genocide for that matter, unless we are using the latest green technology. That's stupid enough as it is, but to phrase it that way allows it to be cut the way that the CCP will cut it, is we lack the moral authority to tell China anything. That's how that will be used by the CCP in its vast propaganda organs. I sometimes wonder about Team Biden. Did they ever read a book about the Cold War and what we're up against with General Secretary Xi? This is not Deng Xiaoping's China. This is a reversion to the Mao China that is, in fact, our competitor for the next century and not a friendly competitor. Terry McAuliffe is in deep, deep trouble in Virginia against Glenn Youngkin. I wrote my Washington Post column about that. It's now posted over at thewashingtonpost.com. I just tweeted it out. Here's Terry McAuliffe in the second debate, cut number 9.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Okay, so he got enormous blowback for this. And here he is at a virtual town hall, cut number 7.
We don't teach critical race theory here in Virginia. It's never been taught.
But in Loudoun County, everybody's stirred up. Everybody thinks we're teaching, that, every white person was a slave owner. I mean, it's just not taught. I'd say it bothers me in the sense that it's a racist dog whistle. It's not taught
It's
here.
not a racist dog whistle, and every time he says that, he loses more votes, which is great. But here he is at a Terry McAuliffe rally. A surrogate speaks what they really think. Cut number 10.
You've got to inform people. The only cure for stupid is education. So get out there.
Yes, Only stupid people believe that CRT is a bad idea. I'll give you Terry's latest ad. He's destroyed his own campaign, but I'll give you his response when we return to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
But yet our country is controlled by Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and BioNTech. And therefore, we're not even allowed to have a conversation about ivermectin. But the few people that are free speech warriors like Joe Rogan, he does not let up. Cut 55, and then we'll go through all three cuts here. And this is, by the way, if you have not listened to this podcast discussion with Sanjay Gupta, it's incredible. Because maybe Sanjay Gupta thought that they were going to have a nice little conversation about why people need to wear masks. I don't know what he was thinking going on Joe Rogan's show. But Joe is mad, and good for Joe. Joe Rogan asked Sanjay Gupta, does it bother you that CNN lied about me? Cut 55.
Does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied, just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer?
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before
but they
coming
did
on
it
your
with
podcast.
such glee.
No,
yes,
Joe.
they did. I watched.
Gorgeous. I want to frame that. Because because we see this little shriveling of a weak human, Sanjay Gupta. I should have asked. I didn't know. You understand that these media reporters have never been called out before? I think Sanjay Gupta was there to promote a book. I don't think it's doing very well after that. I think he has a new book, like COVID War Zero or something. I really think it's called World War COVID. I think that's the name of the book. And so CNN, he's the medical guy there. And so Joe says, you're the medical guy there. What do you mean? And Joe Rogan doesn't give up. He's a dog with a bone, everybody. He says, wait a second. It should bother you. It's a lie on your network, and it's your conscience of it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Religion. It's not just about saying I have a right in this country to not have the government not allow me to go to church, but also that the government cannot compel me to participate in any sort of event, including a vaccine, by the way, that goes against my sincerely held religious beliefs. And so it should just be a matter of course that if you have a conscious objection, then you can say, I, as a Christian, as a Muslim, as a Jew, as any sort of religion, I mean, this covers all religions, by the way, all faiths, all sincerely held beliefs, you should be able to say, I decline to be coerced into participation. But what we're seeing is that a lot of employers are not only requiring a lot of information for people to say, well, you have to justify your religious exemption. We're also seeing that they want this so-called, what they're calling an interactive process. That's basically an interrogation. I have clients right now that they have filed for a religious exemption on the basis of we're pro-life, that's what the Bible teaches, and I cannot take this vaccine. And the Human Resources Department, from the legal counsel of these employers, want to sit down and basically interrogate them and say, is this really a sincerely held religious belief? And they're using this as a pretext to try to deny religious exemptions. It's absurd, and I hope that when there are more lawsuits filed, like just today, in Texas, United Airlines was forbidden from enforcing their vaccine mandate against employees who are claiming a religious exemption. So we're already seeing that the courts are protecting this, but hopefully it'll be more than just Texas.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
They lied
What did
and
they
said
say?
I was taking horse dewormer. First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor, along
They with
shouldn't have said
a
it was
bunch
horse. Of other medications.
If you got a human pill, because there were people that were taking it, the veterinary medication, and you're not, obviously. You got it from a doctor, so that it shouldn't be called that. Ivermectin can be a very effective medication.
Did you see how uncomfortable he was? See, leftists aren't used to pushback, and that's exactly what Joe Rogan gave them, pushback. They're used to existing in these bubbles. They all think alike. They all talk alike. I'm not even sure that they all believe the same thing.
It's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Let me begin this segment with a market report from yesterday. Of course, this is brought to you by Birch Gold, a great sponsor of the program. If you are going to invest in gold, do so with Birch, which you can trust. Go to hughgold.com or text my name Hugh to 474747. That's hughgold.com, or text my name Hugh to 474747. The Dow was off 38. The S&P was up 15, the NASDAQ up 75, I think, yesterday. To be specific, it was up 124. I'm glad I went and checked that. The price of gold went up nearly 1% yesterday to $1,781. Now, I'm not going to annualize that for you because you'll feel sick that you didn't buy gold already. But if you're going to buy some gold to diversify, and diversification protects wealth, do it via Birch Gold. If you're going to roll over a portion of your IRA or your 401k, and I recommend between 5 and 10% into a physical metals IRA that has to be maintained by a third-party depository, do it with Birch Gold. They'll send you a free information kit on that. Just text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747 or visit hughgold.com. Overseas this morning, everything is green, and that's good. We like that. Doesn't mean anything for the United States because a meteor could hit us before then, and Terry McAuliffe might get a hold of a microphone. Let me go back to what the remarkable retread Terry had to say about education. Let's first go back to the debate in which she uttered this famous line, cut number 9.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
All right, now that actually is exactly what he believes. He got on a Zoom call with supporters, a virtual Zoom call yesterday, cut number 7.
We don't teach critical race theory here in Virginia. It's never been taught. But in Loudoun County, everybody's stirred up. Everybody thinks we're teaching, that, every white person was a slave owner. I mean, it's just not taught. I'd say it bothers me in the sense that it's a racist dog whistle. It's not.
It is not a racist dog whistle. Critical race theory is leaking into the schools, and it does so in a variety of ways. And Terry McAuliffe knows it, and every parent knows it. But part of the reason Terry McAuliffe is desperate, the political story last night is they are rushing Democrat surrogates, everybody, to try and get people excited about retread Terry. He's desperate because he's just ticked off parents completely who have had it with the Virginia schools and their complete incoherence on COVID, the shutdowns, the apparent indifference of the teachers' unions to the health and welfare of their children, district by district incoherence, internal district incoherence. And then at a rally, Terry McAuliffe's introducer, you can see Terry in the picture if you're watching on YouTube, calls people who are concerned about public education stupid. Cut number 10.
You've got to inform people. The only cure for stupid is education. So get out there.
Yes, exactly.
Get that? If you are worried about CRT or the COVID absentee policy or the quarantine policy for kids, you're stupid. That's Terry McAuliffe's lead spokesperson yesterday. How bad is it? Well, Terry took out an ad. I'll let you hear the ad, and you can decide how bad is it for Terry McAuliffe. Cut number 8.
As parents, Dorothy and I have always been involved in our kids' education. We know good schools depend on involved parents. That's why I want you to hear this from me. Glenn Youngkin's taking my words out of context. I've always valued the concerns of parents. It's why as governor we scaled back standardized testing, expanded pre-K, and invested $1 billion in public schools. I'm Terry McAuliffe, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad because working together, we can give our kids the education they deserve.
There is an old rule in politics, one of the oldest. If you're talking about your opponent at the end of a race, you're likely losing. So if you're not talking about your agenda and you're talking about your opponent's agenda and what your opponent is saying about you, your polls are horrible. So Virginia, you can vote early through this Saturday. Get out there and vote. Now, I cover the Commonwealth from southwestern Virginia to southeastern Virginia to the Tidewater. I'm up in Richmond. I'm up in, of course, in the northern suburbs that border on Washington, D.C., where I broadcast my show mostly. I'm actually a local host in Washington. Thank goodness, otherwise you'd have to listen to Larry, and that would be terrible. You know, I taught Larry. Dwayne provided mother's milk of radio to Larry, and we're just embarrassed every day he gets on the radio this way and just embarrasses Dwayne this way. But we have a very good radio market in Washington, and it's a city full of long commutes. If you're on the Beltway right now at 638, you're asking yourself, why do I live in D.C.? It's because you got everything there. Go to the National Gallery. The fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I went last week and spent an hour there, and it's one of the great galleries. It's completely empty. I mean, just D.C. is, I think, the most beautiful city in the world. It's just unfortunate that summer is there and everybody leaves, which we will be doing in the future. Never doing another summer in D.C. Never, never, never. I'm persuaded of that. But in Virginia, the schools need saving. And that means Glenn Youngkin needs your vote. Get out there, vote early for Glenn Youngkin. The numbers look good, really good, based upon who is voting early. And the Democrats are scared, and they're rushing radicals. You know, Virginia is not Massachusetts. Somebody told me, oh, it's a blue state now. And I said, it's not Massachusetts blue. It's sort of Colorado blue. Meaning a lot of Democrats have moved to Northern Virginia and took a red state and turned it light blue. But it's very light blue. And Democrat moms don't like this stuff in Loudoun County. And Democrat moms do not like this stuff in Virginia Beach. And Democrat moms do not like this stuff in Richmond and Norfolk and the other population centers. And certainly Republican moms in Lynchburg don't like it. And Republican moms throughout the state. And you see a lot of Glenn Youngkin signs, even in the northern suburbs outside of D.C. And streets that are strewn with Bernie and, you know, those we love unity signs that then proceed to tell you by what they don't say how stupid and ignorant you are and you're deplorable. They used to be all over Northern Virginia. Now they've been replaced by Glenn Youngkin signs. Now, signs are not a sign of anything except that that individual home has decided to declare that they've had it with Ralph Northam and Terry McAuliffe. Good. Keep going. There needs to be a rebuke, a serious rebuke of what is going on in D.C. In fact, yesterday on MSNBC, Stephanie Ruhle had on Chris Van Hollen. Now, I'm hoping Larry Hogan runs against Chris Van Hollen because he is the invisible man from Maryland. As I said to Governor Hogan, he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, if I and Chris Van Hollen took the red line out to its terminus at either end in Maryland, the red line, the Metro in D.C., and it begins in Maryland, ends in Maryland, makes a big U. And if you took it the whole time, in and out of Maryland, and I was writing, I'd get 25 people come up and tell me what a dummy I was or how much they liked me. And nobody would recognize Chris Van Hollen. He is the invisible man. Well, he went on MSNBC yesterday. I think his numbers are bad, too, and said this. Cut number 3.
Stephanie, I think we need to look at all of those issues, but also the...
Stop, I didn't set it up right. Stephanie Ruhle said, why is carried interest, which every populist hates, why is carried interest still deductible in the Biden tax bill? What are you going to do about carried interest? And Chris Van Hollen says a very impolitic thing. We're going to keep it. Cut number 3.
Well, Stephanie, I think we need to look at all of those issues, but also the carried interest loophole.
But on this one specifically, where do you stand?
Well, this one, I think there's ways to try to address it without necessarily getting rid of it entirely. But my overall point here is that when it comes to large areas of raising revenue from individuals who actually have most escaped taxation, you've got to look at the intergenerational transfer of big wealth. And that is an area that we are focused on. We do not have all 50 senators on board yet. But all of this needs to be on the table. I think.
Can I stop you right there? Do you know what intergenerational transfers of wealth means to the Democrats? It means that when your grandma and grandpa die and they have a house that has gone up in value, they want it to be taxed at the time of death, not passed on to your mom and dad. Or if your mom and dad die and they've got a house, they don't want it passed on to you at the stepped-up basis. If your parents have a family business that you've been working in, the Democrats don't want that passed on. They want to step up and the stepped-up basis. They want to tax it immediately. So you have to sell it. So every car wash, every farm, every timber plot of land, everything that's of value that your mom and dad have worked their entire life to accumulate and they want to pass on to you, you're going to have to sell it and give 40% of it to the government or 30% of the government or more. I don't know depends on which state you die in. Don't die up in Washington state. They've got the worst, I think. Though some states have high, others have reasonable like Ohio, some have none like Tennessee. And so be very careful of where you live or where you die at least, because and the Democrats want more for the federal government. They want a second windfall. They tax that asset. They tax the income from that asset. They've taxed the workers from that asset, that small business, that house. They've taxed it, and then you die, and then rather than step up the basis to the value when it becomes your asset in the event that you tax it, you sell it later, they want to tax it. So Chris Van Hollen is out there taxing everything that moves. That's why the Democrats can't get over the 50-yard line. Where are they going to spend their $1.5 trillion? Joe Manchin said, you only get $1.5 trillion from me, because I'm from West Virginia, and we only spend $1.5 trillion max. It's almost double what Barack Obama spent. It's ridiculous, given how much money we spent already and the inflation we've had. They shouldn't spend $1 more, except on defense. I'll talk to Senator Cotton about that. But that's where we are this morning. We also want to go down and dip into President Biden's White House teacher event yesterday, because, of course, early in the day he comes out to talk to people, and cut number 11.
I tell you what, I would like to learn it.
And then an aide comes over and says, stop, Mr. President. We're not quite ready yet. We've got people. He's wandered out to the microphone too early. I hate when that happens. Dwayne comes on the show and starts talking too early. I really hate when that happens. And then
how do you not know the band is so planned?
Yeah, I don't know. How do you not know I'm talking right now? You and Joe Biden have the same MO as far as I'm concerned. Cut number 12, Joe Biden talking to Randy Weingarten, the worst thing to happen to American education since the schools were closed by COVID. Cut number 12.
And Randy, thank you. We kept our commitment, didn't we? Yeah, that's what I said. All right.
Yeah, that's what I said. I don't know what commitment they're talking about. Their commitment is to have you over for wine and cheese at the White House, and I can remember that much. Cut number 14, Joe claiming he was in the civil rights movement. Cut number 14.
And he looked at me and said, Joe, you should run. I said, but I feel strongly about all these issues, but I got involved in the civil rights movement and the war. He said, Joe, you should do it.
No, civil rights movement, Joe? I don't think so. The modern civil rights movement, by the way, is led by Alliance Defending Freedom. They are in Loudoun County, for example, protecting the right of teachers not to be compelled to speak pronouns that they don't believe in. They are everywhere where vaccine mandates are being imposed upon private schools. They are everywhere where religious discrimination is raising its ugly head as it does wherever now the new secularism, the new absolutists of secularism are insisting that no one pray and no one evoke anything having to do with their Christian faith, their Jewish faith, their Islamic beliefs. Matt Sharp tells you why your help is needed. He's with Alliance Defending Freedom. Here's Matt.
One day it may be your grandmother or your business that comes under attack because you wanting to operate consistent with your faith. And maybe your kid's religious school comes under attack for wanting to teach kids the biblical values that you hold so dear. ADF is always there to stand with people to make sure that their rights are not trampled, that their freedom is always protected, both locally, statewide, and ultimately at the U.S. Supreme Court.
ADF works pro bono for all of their clients, and you need to help them, please. At HughHewitt.com. You can call 866-359-9644. And if you're listening to this and you haven't yet contributed, please give as much as you can. They protect the ability to spread the word. They are the people that make it possible for the Great Commission to happen without the persecution of those who are engaged in it. Think about it that way. That's Alliance Defending Freedom. Don't forget Relief Factor. I made it through a good 20-hour day and getting sliced and diced on my own wheels and moving around because of ReliefFactor.com. I recommend it to everyone. I think Dennis is taking it at home. It has nothing to do with COVID, but it does have with the reduction of the inflammatory response to exercise and aging. And I urge you to do what I do right now. Lukewarm coffee from my Pete Wilson mug. There's Governor Wilson's mug. See it right there? We got that at the Pete Wilson Fest last week. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I met at a Pete event 42 years ago. ReliefFactor.com, 1995, gets you started. 41 years ago? I'm in trouble now. Don't play that for the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt. I'll be right back.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom. Now.
We'll see one young lady identify as transgender, and the next thing you know, 6 or 7 young ladies in that same school are now identifying as transgender.
Children taught at age 5 they can create their gender identity, and it's being celebrated.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Every cell of their body that has a nucleus is male or female.
We've now seen parents losing custody of their children if they don't go along with this.
We've all been created XY or XX, so that means there's only 2 genders. And so really the battle is against the creator.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
But can you share with us an overview of how Mark Zuckerberg and his wife directed literally hundreds of millions, I think $419 million into communities, into areas that Biden really needed, and how that plays out?
Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, Priscilla Chan, donated out of their own personal resources, not through they have a private foundation that they normally would do something like this through, but they went through they use their own private resources, and they funneled those resources into a little sleepy Chicago-based nonprofit called Center for Technology and Civic Life. This had nothing to do with conventional campaign finance, like a donation to the DNC to blanket the airwaves with a pro-Democrat Party message. This was money that was funneled through this little 501c3, which is supposed to be nonpartisan organization, directly into the election process. It's as if the DNC was somehow able to insinuate itself into local election offices and kind of take over the running of the on-the-ground realities of the election from within these local election offices, that even though a lot of the people that work there have their own partisan leanings and whatnot, the vast majority of them are serious professionals who try and do the best job that they can. But the activists who came along with CTCL money were not so objectively inclined.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to Salem Now.
I think this feels like a pick 'em up every.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt inside the California studio today. Going back to D.C. on the afternoon flight. I managed to get wrong not once, not twice, but 3 times how many years I've known the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt in the last segment. So Dwayne's going to send that to her in an MP3 I've known her for 43 years since we met at a Pete Wilson fundraiser on Mission Bay in 1978. So I just wanted to correct the record there. I also want to give you some additional guidance from yesterday's show. Jerry Hendricks, Hendrix, Dr. Jerry Hendricks, Navy Captain Jerry Hendricks, wrote this article, The Sputnik Moment, Historic Lessons for Our Hypersonic Age. So if you don't know anything about hypersonics, and that would include almost every Democrat who's listening, go and read this. The conclusion alone. A Sputnik moment has become shorthand for the strategic realization that a nation which had thought itself ahead in a global competition suddenly has found itself in a trailing position and must struggle to catch up. It's all about how that has happened to the United States with the launch of that orbital, the Long March rocket with the hypersonic attack. We're screwed, people. We are really screwed. And I know you want to talk about saving Terry McAuliffe's bacon. Get rid of him and start a STEM program in Virginia, science, technology, energy, engineering, and math. Get going on that stuff. Meanwhile, I wish we had a president who could rally the country, but Jen Psaki tells you what they're this is from Friday. The Nutter, Brian Karim from Playboy, he's the Nutter. He and Seb used to yell at each other, and that was always kind of amusing. Seb always, that's punching down. Seb didn't, he didn't, that's just punching down. Brian is not ever going to win the spelling bee. So he gets a shouted question from Jen Psaki on the way out. Cut number 16.
He will.
How soon? Do you know?
Don't have an update for you, but will soon.
But before the end of the year?
I promise you, Kelly asks about this all the time.
Yeah.
She's keeping us on our toes.
Thank you.
Okay, so Kelly O'Donnell asks about this all the time. What does Kelly O'Donnell ask about all the time? I asked Brett about this last night, Brett Baer. The president's routine medical reports. When are we going to get them? And when are we going to get an interview by the president with someone not named George Stephanopoulos? Brett Baer invites the president every week to have an invite. Fairest, nicest man in America. He's actually, his market, his audience is growing and growing and growing and growing. He is the envy of the news world because he's becoming, as one person said last night, the new Walter Cronkite, the guy you turn to when you want to know what's going on. And he also has a fair and balanced panel at the end. You know, what he inherited from Brit Hume told him, it's not your show, it's not my show, it's their show, it belongs to the audience, do the news. So Brett Baer's Special Report is the best news program, weekdays, Monday through Friday, at 5 p.m., I think. No, 6 p.m. The 5 is on at 5, 6 p.m. Eastern. And Brett originated from the Nixon Library yesterday, and we were chatting after we had dinner, and then I interviewed him. He's a magnificent historian. This book, To Rescue the Republic, is really, really a fine book. But I do believe that at this moment, Jen Psaki has got to get up there. Everyone's got to ask. You know how they used to team up on Trump and they would do volleys of questions? You can't do that with President Biden. He's never, ever available for questions and never, ever out after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And so the White House press corps just says, when is he going to sit down for some interviews? Not 3 questions after prepared remarks that he doesn't answer, but an interview with someone like Brett Baer. Or you could also do Chuck Todd. You could also do Margaret Brennan. You could talk to Jake Tapper, but the best would be Brett Baer, as he represents the serious news business in a way that both sides will respect, both Democrat and Republican and independent. But he's got to get out there. People are, the world's taking his measure, and they're saying there's nobody at home. There's nobody at home. Meanwhile, KPIX, Channel 5, CBS in San Francisco. Cut number 21. This is what's happening. More fun news from the Golden State.
As October is a busy month, and the Giants and Dodgers will play here at Game 5 at Oracle Park tomorrow, and there'll be officers patrolling inside and outside of this area. Now, with fewer officers on the job, the Police Officers Association says there may be some calls that will be left unanswered.
In a city of this size with the month of October and all the things that have been going on, that's going to put quite a dent into operations.
According to San Francisco's Police Officers Association, 120 sworn officers, 80 of them that work in the patrol division, will be off the job tomorrow after failing to comply with the city's vaccine mandate.
But if you take 120 cops or even more off the street, what do you think is going to happen?
That is roughly 6% of the entire department, and SFPOA Vice President Tracy McRae says it will force officers working the streets to make some tough decisions.
If I have a crime happening in the Bayview 5 car where Alex.
Okay, so what's happening in San Francisco? Some officers are
high
refusing
crime.
to get vaccinated. They can't come to work. Now, I think that's wrong for them to do that, but that's their choice. You can't make someone get a vaccine. You can not pay them for not getting a vaccine. And if you're the state, you can have them order them to have a vaccine. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot took it too far, of course. Cut 22.
What
Democratic
we've seen
response. Go ahead,
what
cut
we've
22.
seen from the Fraternal Order of Police and particularly the leadership is a lot of misinformation, a lot of half-truths, and frankly flat-out lies in order to induce an insurrection. And we're not having that. And so
Induce an insurrection. The police are trying to induce an insurrection. Honestly, the Democrats have lost their mind, and they've got to be rebuked in Virginia. Get out there and vote early today for Glenn Youngkin. Go out and vote for Glenn Youngkin. Do not let this moment go by to rebuke an out-of-control left, taken over by the left Democratic Party. Hour number 2 of the Hugh Hewitt Show, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Key City Capital.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Have to get your reaction to Peppermint Patty, who was at the podium, who was explaining why, high gas prices, Boris, it's not a problem everywhere, really. Cut 5.
For a range of issues, and we should talk about those, that the American people are, of course, impacted by rising prices of gas in some parts of the country, not all.
Well, Boris, it's okay then, because it's only some parts of the country. Which parts of the country, Boris?
Oh, yeah. So there's that 50. Remember, Obama thought there was like 62 states. So it's probably those 12 states or whatever it was. Those are the parts of the country they're referring to.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Joe Rogan is a good man. Joe Rogan's a fun person. I don't agree with him on everything. I have to say this every time because I get these emails from people. Charlie, how dare you? Like, what are you, Greta Thunberg? Look, Joe Rogan has a different worldview on certain things, but he loves freedom and he loves his country. He's willing to speak out about it. He has been phenomenal on the lockdowns, on the vaccine, on masks. I had a chance to meet Joe Rogan about a month ago in Los Angeles. And Joe Rogan, right when I met him, we posted it on Instagram, and the picture we said has Ivermectin boys, and it went totally viral because you're not allowed to say that. And so Joe Rogan, of course, took Ivermectin after getting the Fauci virus and made a rapid turnaround.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Why don't we talk about Southwest Airlines, which has been in the news very recently.
Basically, Southwest had to cancel over 1,000 flights, and they claimed initially that it was for the weather, and a lot of them were actually out of Florida, and ironically, I was actually out speaking at a conference in Miami, and it was beautiful weather when I flew out on Sunday. So so this was, of course, not weather-related. They're trying to claim that it wasn't for pushing back against the vaccine mandates. But what a lot of people are speculating, and what I think there is some merit to, is that there is a group now of pilots who are saying we are refusing to be coerced by our employer to take the vaccine. And in fact, the Union of Southwest Pilots has filed a lawsuit in the Federal District of Texas. What's interesting, Eric, is that traditionally conservatives have been kind of anti-union for a lot of really good reasons.
Oh, yeah.
And to say that, we are coerced into having to give union dues, and then they, of course, funnel those dues to Democrat candidates or things like that. But this shows the power of collective bargaining. This group of pilots is now pushing back and saying we will not be coerced by our employer into unilaterally modifying our employment conditions to take a vaccine that could, by the way, have a lot of negative influence. I mean, there was a friend of mine who was even saying the other day that a friend of his, who is a pilot for a different carrier, has some anecdotal evidence to say that there have been some pilots who have had blood clots or, the myocarditis, other things at altitude. And so there are a lot of pilots that are very concerned about that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
This was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands, kill him. Jump.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build the superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
The mayor is backtracking. So it's happening. People have to stand up. These people understand that they have to get reelected. And sometimes we just have to remind them who's in charge. And we, the people, are in charge. That is our system. It is a democratic republic. We all get to participate. But we elect people that we trust. We put them in office, and we trust them to keep us safe. We trust them to abide by the Constitution and to keep us free. And when they do not do that, we have to kick their butts out of office. But the important thing is, as voters, you have to always be mindful of freedom. You have to always be mindful of freedom. Quite frankly, I do believe that it's one of the advantages that I have as a black conservative. You can call me Uncle Tom sellout, whatever. There's no affirmative action plan in heaven. All I have to do is worry about Jesus. I don't have time to worry about you. But I do believe as black conservatives, I compare us to runaway slaves because I often say our thoughts are consumed with freedom. That's what happens oftentimes with black conservatives, is we find out and we get this piece of information, we get this piece of history, and we're like, what? The federal government or the Democrat Party did what to enslave us? What did they do? And then you just start looking for that. I also believe it's an advantage that people of faith have, whether you're Christian, whether you're Jewish.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Go ahead and tell me
Tell 'em now.
you voted for Joe Biden and you keep...
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to Salem Now. Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt inside the California Hugh Hewitt studio on this Tuesday morning, flying back to the Beltway this afternoon. My favorite story of the morning comes from Bloomberg. Democrats swarm Virginia race to blunt Glenn Youngkin. Terry McAuliffe is going under the water. Why is it? Let's play it 5 times, just for fun. 5 times. It's only a 2-second clip. 5 times, Ben. Cut number 9.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
5.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
5.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Did you take math from my 3rd grade teacher as well? He did 6 times?
I didn't even know Ben was Catholic.
Did he have Sister Benedicte? We were talking about Sister Benedicte yesterday. And by the way, sisters out there who are listening, I had great nuns. Sister Benedicte may have been a little bit of advanced age to be dealing with 3rd graders in 1966 or 4 or 3 or whatever year it was. But Sister Mary Jean Kornenko taught me geometry, so she's a genius. And we had many, many fine nuns. Sister Benedicte, though, not good on the math because you have to stay asleep to teach math. Here's the deal. Let's play it again, Ben, for the benefit of those who got sidetracked.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Okay, that's Terry McAuliffe in the second debate. That actually left a mark. Like people said, huh? What? Parents said, who's that guy? Retread Terry? He's running against Glenn Youngkin, Mr. Education, over he's been talking about education since before the primary. He won the GOP distributed convention because as soon as the Virginia State Department of Education announced last spring they would no longer offer accelerated math to any math-gifted student before the 11th grade. All right, that's true. I'm not making that up. Virginia State Department of Education, no more accelerated math classes for anyone in this state because of equity until the 11th grade. That's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard a Department of Education announce. So Glenn Youngkin got on him and got the nomination. He's going to get the governorship. And his appointments, as I point out in the Washington Post column, which I've tweeted out, will be national in scope. And I hope he goes for the same charter policies that Doug Ducey has adopted in Arizona, public and private charter support, tax credits for Arizona taxpayers, Virginia taxpayers. I hope he goes for the ability to dismiss the lowest 10%. You got to give each principal the authority to dismiss their losers. Because some teachers, let's face it, are not cut out to teach. Says nothing about their ability to be great human beings or just not very good teachers, not very serious teachers. And if you have had, like I had, 3 kids who went through public education, that's 39 years of public education, K through 12 for 3 kids, 39. I can do that math, 3 times 13, 39 years. There's going to be a best teacher and a worst teacher of those 39. I know who the worst teacher is. There were a lot of great ones. But it's always a bell curve. I know who the worst teacher is. I'm not going to tell you who the worst teacher is. That teacher is still teaching. I mean, it's been a decade. It's been 12 years. Actually, it's been 16 years. There's an elementary school teacher, the worst teacher that any of my 3 kids had, still teaching. That's the problem in public school, tenure. And if Glenn Youngkin wins and he gets a legislature with him, vote Republican, straight ticket in Virginia. Let's make Virginia the model for public education reform in the state. Terry McAuliffe, though, he's bleeding out, right, and going underneath. So they're rushing, according to Bloomberg. Democrats swarm the Virginia race. You know they're sending in? Stacey Abrams. Isn't that exactly who you want to see in your state? Stacey Abrams, who can't count votes. She thinks she won the Georgia election when she lost. So she's just the perfect poster child for education reform. So Terry McAuliffe puts out an ad yesterday. I love this ad. I'm playing an ad because it's an admission that you're bleeding out. Cut number 8.
As parents, Dorothy and I have always been involved in our kids' education. We know good schools depend on involved parents. That's why I want you to hear this from me. Glenn Youngkin's taking my words out of context. I've always valued the concerns of parents. It's why as governor we scaled back standardized testing, expanded pre-K, and invested $1 billion in public schools. I'm Terry McAuliffe, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad because working together, we can give our kids the education they deserve.
So Terry McAuliffe wants to run for president. He knows Joe Biden can't run. So he's mailing it in. He won in Virginia before. Virginia went pretty easily for Joe Biden. He figures he's going to mail it in. Up pops Glenn Youngkin, who's sort of a progressive educator. I don't mean progressive in the Democratic sense, but a very smart guy who comes out of the private sector where he's made a lot of money being an investment banker. He is originally from Richmond. He grew up in Virginia Beach, and now he lives in Northern Virginia. He's a man of God. He's married to a wonderful wife, has a great set of kids. He's just a great person, investing in his community, leading the Carlyle Group to higher and higher levels of achievement. And then he says, okay, I'm going into public service. My time to serve. And he leaves the Carlyle Group, and he just turns heads. He's also a giant. I think he's like 6'7". First time I met Glenn, I said, holy smokes, you're a big guy. And he's charismatic, and he's really got people fired up, mostly about education. So when you run an ad like this, don't listen to what he says. Listen to who he's talking about. Because if you mention your opponent's name, you're losing. Old rule of thumb. If you mention your opponent's name yourself, you can have surrogates do it. You can hammer someone with a negative ad. But if you have to go on camera and mention your opponent and talk about what he's talking about, you're losing. Play the Terry McAuliffe ad again, cut number
As
8.
parents, Dorothy and I have always been involved in our kids' education. We know good schools depend on involved parents. That's why I want you to hear this from me. Glenn Youngkin's taking my words out of context. I've always valued the concerns of parents. It's why as governor we scaled back standardized testing, expanded pre-K, and invested $1 billion in public schools. I'm Terry McAuliffe, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad because working together, we can give our kids the education they deserve.
Taking words out of context does not mean quoting a complete sentence. Here is the complete sentence, cut number 9.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Cut number 9.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Again.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Let's put the context into cut number 9. Again.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
All right, that's a complete sentence. The context is Terry McAuliffe does not believe that parents should be telling schools what to teach. He went on to add he had vetoed a bill that stopped parents from getting pornographic materials removed from school libraries, and he was proud of that. Proud of that. Proud of that. Because the teachers union didn't want parents involved in what was being offered to and taught to their students. Terry McAuliffe look, Terry likes me, and I like Terry. Here's Terry talking about me.
I'm Terry McAuliffe, and you should listen to the Hugh Hewitt Show every single day, the greatest radio show in the United States of America.
Now I'm humbled by that. I'm so humbled by it, I think I'll play it again. Terry McAuliffe on Hugh Hewitt.
I'm Terry McAuliffe, and you should listen to the Hugh Hewitt Show every single day, the greatest radio show in the United States of America.
That would be me. That would be me. Terry and I have always gotten along well. We got our first encounter, Dwayne will remember this, at the 2004 convention in New York. Terry was up there schmoozing and going down to defeat. He thought Kerry was going to win. And he came by for a hostile interview. He wanted to fight with me. And he sat down. He called me Huey. Remember this, Dwayne? What a smarmy guy. Huey.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Huey. Yeah. Over and over again because I was gritting him on.
Because he thought that would bug you. Like you've never had somebody make fun of your
I've
name
got
before.
Trump tattoos. You know, I've been hearing Huey since I was, 3. And every other kind of baby Huey, just it's silly stuff. And I always laugh at the people that do it. But Terry McAuliffe,
childish. It's just childish.
He is that way. He's Terry. He's also given to low blows and below the belt punches, and he's been called out on it again. But you cannot run away from the sound of your own voice. Cut number 9.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
That's Terry McAuliffe. So if you're in Virginia right now, or you know anyone in Virginia, or you want to make a contribution to the Republican return and renaissance, and you want to get Democrats out of power before they take all your money and get double-digit inflation back in the United States, support Glenn Youngkin. Support Glenn Youngkin. Here is, by the way, Pramila Jayapal, the congressman extraordinaire, in an internet video talking about Joe Biden's agenda, cut number 6.
Hey everyone, it's been another big week here in Washington, D.C. And of course, the big ticket item is the ongoing negotiations around the popular Build Back Better Act. As chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, I am so proud to be leading the charge to ensure that we deliver on President Biden's entire agenda. That means investing in roads and bridges, but it also means investing in people and our communities. This bill is so important because it will make transformational investments that literally will change how working people and families across our country wake up every morning. It means 12 weeks of guaranteed paid leave, universal childcare, real climate action, pre-K, community college, housing, and healthcare. It means not leaving behind women or working families or immigrants. It means delivering on President Biden's agenda, the Democratic agenda, and
socialism.
what we all promised people.
It means socialism and open borders. It means no defense spending. I would like to take Representative Jayapal. She put that, by the way, in her internet video. If you are watching on YouTube or on the show feed or over at Rumble, she put the words were down below. We ought to translate that. We're taking your money for our friends, and we're opening the borders. We're taking all your money. I'll be right back. It's Hugh Hewitt. Stay with me.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Go ahead and tell me that you voted for Joe Biden and you can't believe what's happened to America. Jimmy Carter is going to be a resounding success compared to this guy. Listen to Circleback Psaki attempting lamely to explain away Ron Klain supporting the charge that all of this crisis in America with the empty shelves and surging inflation and the supply chain crisis is a high-class problem, and it's actually a good sign. You know, people, it's a good thing.
Why would Ron Klain tweet that, and would you agree that that's a little bit tone deaf?
Do you think 2 tweets means more? I'm just curious. So just for context, what Ron Klain retweeted was a tweet from the former chairman of economic advisors, Jason Furman, where he said, for full context, which I think is important, most of the economic problems we're facing, inflation, supply chains, are high-class problems. What he went on to say is, we wouldn't have had them if unemployment rate was still 10%. We would instead have had a much worse problem. So I think the point here is, well, there are some critics who are saying what some of these critics are saying is we don't know if they're saying that what they thought was great was when the unemployment rate was double what it is today, or when people were locked in their homes and therefore gas prices were lower. We're at this point because the unemployment rate has come down and been cut in half, because people are buying more goods, because people are traveling, and because demand is up, and because the economy is turning back on.
Give 'em the old razzle-dazzle, razzle-dazzle 'em. That's Jen Psaki.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at Rumble.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy.
This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized to go after perceived domestic enemies. And that's very scary.
Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power.
We are now all rooting for his success. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy.
We don't live in the United States of America as any of us would like to understand it.
We have a peaceful transition of power process. That's not what happened.
They interviewed General Flynn, and they did it in what was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russian interference.
They colluded. They were in on it.
He would constantly say, I have seen evidence of collusion.
Until this is released, I can't comment. I can't go into the particulars.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as.
But he knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
Well, it's classified. You can't see it.
Collusion. You just got to be willing to see it.
New York's Daily News ran this front page, Trump is Hitler.
How could 62 million Americans vote for Hitler? Are 62 million Americans Nazis?
We really almost thought it was a joke. Like, really, you're not going to accept that you lost this election?
"22 minutes after the hour, America. Hugh Hewitt getting you going in the morning. I am glad you are joining with me to get going today. When I was in Atlanta on Wednesday night last, many people, we're getting back out on the road. I'm going to be in Ohio on Sunday night, 98.9, and the Center for Christian Virtue sponsoring a debate among the Republican candidates for Senate who wish to replace retiring Rob Portman. There are 6 of them. I was talking with Brett Baer last night about how to moderate a debate with 6 candidates. And the most important thing is that they get an equal allocation of time. Same question, same opportunity, no right of reply. Hughes rules. And we did one at the Nixon Library, which went very, very well. And so I'm insisting on Hughes rules. Whenever I agree to do debate, I'm going to go up and do the Minnesota governor's debate. I just love doing debates. I think the most interesting thing a journalist can do is to be fair and to make sure that you're not the story, but that you're asking good questions that a Republican primary electorate, in this case, will be interested in. And not asking George Stephanopoulos, why do you want to ban contraception, Governor Romney? Or Candy Crowley, you're wrong, Governor Romney. You know, I'm not one of those people. The moderators should be asking good questions that they've thought through. And I was talking shop with Brett last night. But now I want to talk sponsors with you. Yesterday after the show, I got on the call with the sales team. Salem has a great sales team. I mean, 20 different of the best professionals in America. If you want to sell your product, you want to sell your business, get a hold of the Salem sale people. And you can always send me a note or Dwayne a note, and they'll connect you up with the team. Mike Reed is their vice president. And we're talking about various clients, one of whom is andrewandtodd.com. And this segment is brought to you by Andrew and Todd, because I update you on the markets this time every morning and on the interest rate this time every morning. And yesterday, the Dow was down 36 points, the S&P was up 15, and NASDAQ was up 124. And Amazon had its 5th consecutive positive day, up to $37 to 3,446. And I don't know what it'll do today. This 5th wave of COVID or whatever is going on, people are going to stay home. They're just going to stay home and shop. They're just not going to shop the way that they have shopped, particularly if they have an underlying illness. If you just add the number of people with comorbidities who are just going to stay away from shopping this Christmas season, you know Amazon's going to have a huge 4th quarter. They report in a couple of weeks, whatever. But Andrew and Todd don't sell things. What they do is help you refinance your house. And I have been telling you what they have been telling me. The 10-year Treasury is creeping up. It's now up to 1.584. Last week, it briefly went over 1.6% for the 10-year bond. That's not the interest rate you get. It's the interest rate on which a couple of points are added, sometimes 1.5, sometimes 1.25, sometimes 2, depends on your credit, to get your 30-year fix. Some of you can still get below 3. Most of you are going to pay 3. It depends on your credit. It depends on having good people handling your soup to nuts mortgage application. Andrew and Todd are lenders. AndrewandTodd.com. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, and they and their team, who you can call up if you're old-fashioned, 888-888-1172, will get you the very best refi, or if you're going to buy a house, they do new purchases. If you're a veteran, you don't want to put any money down, they do veterans. If you are a senior and you want a reverse mortgage to get the money out of your house right now because it's going to make living easy, then you can do that too with AndrewandTodd.com. But we were talking about my relationship with my clients. And when I let a client in, I take care of the client. and the rep for Key City Capital was talking with me about how well Key City Capital, which you can find at keycitycapital.com/Hugh, is doing. They are not for dalliers. They take a lot of money and invest it in apartment complexes in second-tier markets. That doesn't mean bad markets. It means markets like Memphis and Nashville and Austin. They buy apartment buildings and they allow you to become participants in an apartment building. And rents are going up because the cost of houses are crazy and some people can't get on that ladder. So they got to rent somewhere. And if you buy the right apartment building, it's clipping coupons with a great return. So people are going to keycitycapital.com/Hugh in much greater numbers after 2 weeks. Charlie will be on tomorrow. I think Charlie Dombeck is their senior partner and their accountant who first looks over your tax stuff to get money back that you shouldn't have paid and prepare you for next year. And so you know what the secret to selling is? Only have great clients. Only let people on whom you're proud to associate with. And that's what I do with AndrewandTodd.com and Key City Capital. And that's why if you're thinking sales aren't where they should be, or you want to move a new product or a new website, get a hold of Mike Reed and the team over at Salem. They'll do it for you. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Key City Capital.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Did you ever think that Terry McAuliffe would actually publicly state that the Democrat president is the reason that he might lose Virginia?
Of course, I never expected it, never thought it would happen before this president. Listen, here's the deal. We all knew as you and I stood there on January 20th and we saw President Trump fly to Florida. We knew that things were going to be bad, okay? You and I talked about it right there at Andrews Air Force Base. It was an honor to be there with you. We knew it was going to be bad, but I don't think even the worst critics, the most austere prognosticators thought it was going to be this bad. I mean, this is historically terrible. I have said this once. I've said it a million times. I challenge anybody, my friend, anybody, to find a president in the history of this country who's worse than this. We're in George III category. That's all we are. This isn't about American presidents anymore. It's George III. It's Louis XVI. That is where we are. We are.
But what does that mean?
I have no idea where they're breaking.
What's the DNC react? How long are the Democrats going to hang on to this guy?
That's a very good question. I think the Democrats realistically are going to keep him there because the cackler is even worse than he is. See, that's the problem they got. They put themselves in such a bind by playing their usual racial politics. It's okay when you Kamala Harris. And that what they have now is a president who doesn't know what year it is, probably still thinks it's like 1976, okay? And they've got a vice president who's universally despised and doesn't have any adult skill.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Sanjay Gupta is used to the CNN way of doing things, which is, kind of kid gloves. And Joe Rogan said, no. You're in the lion's den now. You see, this is a place where people have testosterone, wisdom, and patriotism. You work for CNN where none of those things exist.
You're probably the only one at CNN that's glad.
No. We're not.
The rest of them are all lying about me taking horse medication. And we should talk about that.
That bothered you.
It should bother you, too. They're lying at your network about people taking human drugs versus drugs for veterinary.
Calling it a horse dewormer is not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network. And it's a lie that's a willing... That's a lie that they're conscious of. It's not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
I love it. Rarely do you see justice happen in real time. Rarely. I'm a big fan of the book of Job. And one of the things I like about the book of Job is that it's real. It's authentic. It's kind of why do bad things happen to good people? That's what the book of Job is about. In the second book of Plato's Republic, it talks about justice, and actually the narrative frames that good things happen to people that do good and bad things happen to things that do bad, and rarely do you actually ever get to see justice play out in real time. That's justice. Sanjay Gupta having to sit down for 2 hours of Joe Rogan being like, it should bother you. It's a conscious lie where you're saying that I should take a horse dewormer. And Sanjay Gupta said, man, that really bothered you. Yeah, it was the #1 news story on the planet that Joe Rogan is going around to Preakness or the Kentucky Derby with his hands open asking for medication.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now. The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as...
But he knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to Salem Now.
Even worse than being poor. We would have sandwiches with no meat. My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back. America, Virginia is my home, which is why I hope you elect Glenn Youngkin. And if you're anywhere in the Beltway or you know anyone who lives anywhere in Virginia and the Commonwealth, get them on the phone and get them to the early voting. They just have to go find their register of voters. They can walk right in, show their Virginia driver's license. We do have voter ID, thank goodness, in Virginia. Vote early and secure and get your ballot cast for Glenn Youngkin. Florida, you have a great governor. You also have a great first lady. Yesterday, Ron and Casey DeSantis made an appearance. Casey DeSantis diagnosed with breast cancer. And this is what you want to hear from people who are facing that fight. Cut number 20.
Probably the most important person that has stood by me is our wonderful First Lady. And I just want to thank you for all the thoughts and prayers. I trust in the Lord. I know how tough she is. She's doing very, very well. And in fact, she's doing so well that she wanted to come here tonight and say hello to you. So here she is.
I hear when you get a standing ovation before you even walk in the door, you should probably just leave. Right. No, but I just want to say God bless you and thank you for the pins and thank you for what you've done. It really, gosh, it means a whole lot. And, I don't want to start tearing up because I didn't put on waterproof mascara. I didn't prepare myself properly, but, I've done a lot of thinking, obviously, as of recent. And I think there's a lot that we can be upset about, that we can be sad about, the direction of our country, the future of our nation, our families, our communities, our safety, our children, their education, their futures, our health, and our well-being. But I'll tell you one thing is for sure. I'm sure as hell not giving up. ever, ever give up the fight. Ever. And to steal some words, and I do this from a time or two because I steal some of his best lines, and I can do that because I went before him. But to steal some lines from the strongest, most courageous person I have ever met in my life, who is my husband, to steal some lines from him, I have only begun to fight.
But, Casey DeSantis, the First Lady of Florida, very inspiring as is Governor DeSantis. And that clip, every cancer survivor out there, everyone who's battling cancer today knows that that's the attitude you got to carry into the fray. It's the attitude that had Dwayne win his long battle. It's the attitude of everyone I've ever known who won battles with the disease has had to have. You just got to go in and say, I am just begun to fight. Good on them. Great moment. I want to contrast what you just heard. Well, first I got to give you a piece of news. Portland. I'm on in Portland. I like Portland. I have a great bookstore in Portland. I love the Cascade Mountain. I love to go to Oregon. I don't like the Oregon Ducks. They beat the Ohio State Buckeyes in the shoe. But other than that, I like Oregon. Nobody deserves the Democratic government of Portland. That's why you really can't vote for a Democrat anywhere. They set an unenviable record in the city yesterday. Not temperature record. More than any other year, this is the year, 2021, for record number of homicides in Portland, 67 this year. And that was in September. In a metropolis racked by gang violence, fear, and frustration have settled over Portland as stories like this one have made some wary to go out at night. Unlike previous years, more bystanders, neighbors, and friends are being caught in the crossfire. From people mourning at vigils and sitting in cars to children playing in a park. People should be leery. This is a dangerous time, said Lionel Irving, a lifelong Portland resident and a gang outreach worker. Portland's police department is struggling to keep up amid an acute staffing shortage and budget cuts. Remember to fund the police? Now the liberal Pacific Northwest city is implementing novel solutions aimed at improving safety, including adding traffic barrels to prevent drive-by shootings, suspending minor traffic stops so officers can focus on immediate threats. There's 650,000 people in that city. It's failing. It's failing because they defunded the police and they have restricted the police. And it's a Democratic-run city. That's why you can't vote for Terry McAuliffe. That's why you have to vote for Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, and why we have to have a red wave across every city, state, and municipal election, and every kind of borough election and county election and mayoral election ever. You cannot have Portland develop into a model. Meanwhile, you have Mehdi Hassan over at MSNBC on with Chris Hayes last night telling you what the left thinks of you. Cut number 24.
Yeah, I'm so glad you, Chris, drew a straight line from the Iraq war to the current COVID debacle, because there's a couple of ironies here, one of which is very tragic. The first is that Colin Powell was part of an administration that misled the American people into a war that cost hundreds of thousands of innocent lives. And then today he dies from complications from a disease that spread unchecked through America because another Republican administration misled the American people. That's the first irony. The second irony is, as you point out, the Fox News role here. Because Iraq, as Michelle pointed out, is what really has destroyed Americans' trust in the media long before Donald Trump came on the scene. And all media organizations have a role to, have to own up to the role in that, including this network. But Fox was at the center of that propaganda, that Republican administration propaganda campaign. A few years ago, Chris, there was a poll that came out which showed, even in 2015, 52% of Fox News viewers believed that we had found WMDs in Iraq. In 2015, compared to 14% of MSNBC viewers, I would just point out. So it's very important to point out here that the same lies that were told about Iraq that were believed on a completely different level by Fox viewers compared to everyone else. Same thing on COVID. You see it with the studies done of Sean Hannity's viewers at the start of the pandemic. Again and again, Fox News is this misinformation machine. And as we go, ha, 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 look how silly they are. Ha, 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 look how eccentric they are. No, people actually die as a result of watching Fox News, whether it's going to war in Iraq or the pandemic. Sorry.
Now, I have crossed swords with Mehdi before when he was working for Al Jazeera. He is a liar. You've got to understand that. I don't say that about anyone at MSNBC. I work for NBC. Mehdi's a liar, and he's attempting to normalize Mehdi. And he's also profoundly, jarringly, horribly indifferent to the grief of the Powell family yesterday, using the death of Secretary Powell and General Powell to launch a jihad against Fox News. Does it make any sense to you at all how he managed to get... General Powell was vaccinated. General Powell had been fighting multiple myeloma for many, many years and bravely fought that battle. Immunocompromised, he had vaccines. He clearly was not taking any medical advice as a result of anything he heard on Tucker's show or anything else. And after spending the better part of an evening with Bret Baier and the responsibility with which Bret approaches it, and then to hear basically a propagandist for the hardest left that you will hear on an American mainstream news broadcast. Mehdi is just out there. I mean, he's actually, I don't even want to get into it. He's the sort of person you just cannot trust in anything that he says, nothing. And the idea that MSNBC is normalizing Mehdi, it just weep for my former network. I mean, I had the lowest rated show on MSNBC in MSNBC history because they put it on at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday morning because they didn't want me to succeed. They've made a bet. They've made a bet on the 1% of the nuttery on the left, and they're doubling down on that when they bring Mehdi in. Rachel and Chris are no longer sufficiently crazy for the left wing at MSNBC. There is in America a bell curve as there is in everything. And there's a far right and there's a far left. Now, Fox News is not far right, but Fox News is by far the healthiest cable station. It just crushes the other two combined cable news station for a reason. They're fair and balanced. You'll see liberals on there. You'll even see progressives on there. You'll hear the news, and then at night you'll hear center-right and right-wing opinion. But you will not get that kind of blatant disinformation. You just won't. And I wanted to say that because I can't. The reason we need the Alliance Defending Freedom, and I want to pitch here for they're my sponsor. I want you to go over there. Is because of people like Mehdi. He'll end up inciting shutdowns of evangelical opinion. He'll end up inciting mass action against Christians who are just wanting to be left alone. He's going to end up trying to get churches shut down. He's just that kind of a totalitarian leftist. He's Orwell's nightmare. And we need the Alliance Defending Freedom because of people like him. Alliance Defending Freedom will defend your free speech. Alliance Defending Freedom will defend your religious liberty. Alliance Defending Freedom is already doing that. If I can play for you the Matt Sharp talking to you about how they roll. Here's Matt Sharp.
One day it may be your grandmother or your business that comes under attack because you wanting to operate consistent with your faith. And maybe your kid's religious school comes under attack for wanting to teach kids the biblical values that you hold so dear. ADF is always there to stand with people to make sure that their rights are not trampled, that their freedom is always protected, both locally, statewide, and ultimately at the U.S. Supreme Court.
Now, I'm telling you right now, Alliance Defending Freedom is our front guard. They're our Spartans. They are at the Thermopylae Pass of every cultural conflict and religious liberty and free speech conflict in the United States. And it doesn't matter how many Medis they throw at these folks. We have the best lawyers. We have the best arguments. We are constitutionalists. We actually know and understand what the Constitution guarantees. It's intended to restrict government from taking over your life. I don't believe this IRS $600 transaction is in the least bit constitutional. I don't. And I believe that they will find that it will be applied unevenly and unconstitutionally if it is adopted, if the Democrats get it through. I'm not sure that they're going to get it through. But in the meantime, Alliance Defending Freedom needs you to support them to the extent that you can. That might be $5, that might be $500,000. It might be $50, it might be $500, it might be $5,000, whatever you can do. Go over to HughHewitt.com and find Alliance Defending Freedom's banner at the top. Or you can call them at 866-359-9644. I have a beef with some broadcasters. They rush through numbers. 866-359-9644. 44. I really do. Some broadcast. My phone number is 1-800-520-1234. I want you to always call that. I want you to hear the phone number. But ADF, the banner over at HughHewitt.com. ReliefFactor.com time. Do not forget, do not leave home without it. If you're going into Portland, lock your doors. But make sure in your car before you leave your driveway, take your Relief Factor. You might have to walk home. People might steal your car in Portland. Boy, that story is going to do wonders for Portland's tourism, isn't it? Highest murder rate ever in Portland right now. ReliefFactor.com. You need to be exercising more. You need to be, not all of us are born like Brett Baer with a golf swing from God. Brett's a +3 handicap. He's like Dick Hauser, my old buddy Dick. Dick's got a +2. And these guys are just given gifts by God. They don't age. They just endure. They play their golf games. You got a +3, +2. Baer and Hauser. It's unfair. But we can even the score by walking and running with ReliefFactor.com. $19.95 gets you a 3-week starter pack. Get out there and get it.
Salem Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Que lo siento mucho.
And that's the only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God calls you to the cross. Don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
CNN is going crazy. Joe Rogan called them out the other day. Now they're sitting there trying to lie and say, no, we never called Ivermectin a horse dewormer. So we'll play a couple audio clips for you because they sure as heck did. And quite frankly, in my opinion, they're complicit in the deaths. And I don't say this lightly. I don't say it just because I want to say something that's shocking on air. I sincerely believe it. I believe Facebook. I believe a lot of these big tech companies. I believe CNN, MSNBC. A lot of these people are complicit in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans. I really do. For not getting the word out on therapeutics.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Over 200 million Americans have gotten at least one shot. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us. So please do the right thing.
Now you're being patient again. We shouldn't be divided on the vaccine mandate. Now you're back to that because guess what? Your obstinance isn't working. Your mandates aren't working. Are there going to be booster mandates? Have you noticed nobody's talked about a booster mandate? Does a mandate only apply to round 1? What about round 2 or 3? It is the left who has politicized COVID. Not us.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
How a million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. You've been a regular guest on the Hugh Hewitt Show for a long time when you have your own music. David M. Drucker, as he is known on Twitter with the Washington Examiner, has his own music, which is, of course, from the Sinister series on Washington, D.C., because David M. Drucker knows everything about Washington, D.C. It is also pub date for David M. Drucker. In Trump's Shadow drops today. In Trump's Shadow is David's new book on the 2024 race to be the next president of the United States. In Trump's Shadow is in bookstores everywhere. In Trump's Shadow is available at Amazon.com. And I'm following the Luntz rule, In Trump's Shadow, and saying it 7 times. And if you see me on the airplane today from LAX to DC, I will be reading In Trump's Shadow because I got mine already, unlike you folks. David, good morning on Pub Day. How is In Trump's Shadow doing?
In Trump's Shadow is doing pretty good, Hugh. I'm excited. As you know, but for me, it's a first-time thing. When you write a book, I'm not curing cancer, and it's not as hard as being a parent. But when it comes to writing and reporting and analyzing, it's one of the hardest things you can do if you do what I do for a living. And so it's thrilling that it's finally out there. I hope people read it. What I tried to do, and you and I have talked about this, there are plenty of books about what happened during the Trump years, and I think they're great. I'm trying to talk about the impact he has had on the Republican Party and what it means for 2024, really what it means for the future of the party and the country, even beyond 2024, because I really believe that after reporting the book, the Trump presidency, whether or not Trump ever runs again, even if, and this is not happening, obviously, but even if Republicans had decided to throw Trump himself overboard, his impact from an agenda and policy perspective was generational. And I think what you're going to see in 24 are most Republicans running for president in one way or another telling Republican voters that they are going to continue Trump's legacy and, in a sense, be the next Trump, but maybe without quite being the next Trump.
David Drucker, I am going to moderate a debate of would-be senators in Ohio on Sunday night, the 6 Republicans who are running for United States Senate to replace Rob Portman. And I'm reading In Trump's Shadow to prepare for that debate. They might want to get a hold of a copy themselves if they want to know what I'm thinking about. I think you're going to sell like hotcakes. I cannot wait to read this, but I wanted to ask you, I know that 2 of the profiles in the book are of Robert O'Brien and Mike Pompeo. I was with both of those men last week. I'm curious what your assessment of both of their intentions and odds are should President Trump not enter the race, and if he should.
Well, it's very interesting. Let me start with Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State, because I spent so much time researching him and reporting on it. He wants to run for president. And in fact, in a podcast interview a couple of weeks ago, and it's a companion to my book, so it's also aptly titled In Trump's Shadow, I asked Secretary Pompeo, I know you're not going to tell me if you're running or not today. I'm not that crazy. But I said, if Trump decides to run a third time, does that automatically mean you will not? And he would not say, as some have said, that automatically means he would not. He said, look, if you're going to run for president, you need to believe that you have something unique and critical to offer the country at a time in history. He is planning to run, and everything he is doing is about planning to run. Robert O'Brien, who I profiled less but did mention, is a very interesting figure because he comes from the traditional wing of the party, but he fit in very well with Trump in the White House and was his most successful national security advisor from the perspective of doing the job and not getting crosswise with the commander-in-chief. Could be a very interesting dark horse candidate as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He's a Mormon. He comes from the West. There are pockets of Mormon voters in Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, other states where in a multi-candidate primary, he might be able to do some damage. He's also interested in running. I classify him as less interested in Pompeo.
I will tell you, I just played Ron and Casey DeSantis at an appearance yesterday where Casey DeSantis discussed her fight against breast cancer. I have not yet read In Trump's Shadow. It's the airplane book for today. I assume there's a lot on Governor DeSantis.
There is not a lot, but there is a reason. It wasn't purposeful. When I started out reporting In Trump's Shadow, what struck me and what initiated the book was that there were a group of Republicans planning for 2024 since almost the day Trump took office in 2017. Usually you wait for the reelect. The incumbent wins, the incumbent loses of your party, and then everybody's free to do whatever they want for themselves. Well, a lot of people started planning for 2024 very early. Ron DeSantis was not one of those people. In fact, his rise is really precipitated by his winning the election for governor in Florida in 2018, long after some of the candidates I was profiling had started working on their 2024 presidential campaign. And so I mentioned DeSantis early in the book, but for the reason I have laid out, he didn't fit the initial parameters for reporting. And in fact, by the time he was really rising as a major contender, I was getting toward a filing date for the book that had already been extended. And there was just no way to include him in a proper way.
Well, this is not our book interview. We will do that. The classic 2-segment podcast, 2 segments on the radio podcast interview, if not this week, next with David M. Drucker. As I prepare for the Republican senatorial debate in Ohio, there's no better book to do so with than In Trump's Shadow. You'll see me reading it on the plane today if I see you in the airport. David M. Drucker on Twitter. Go over to Amazon, get the book that's going to make every political reporter read it. In Trump's Shadow. He, of course, sat down with former President Trump. We'll tell you about that when we do our book interview. Thank you, David. I'll be back. Hour number 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Straight ahead.
Million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
This White House has absolutely no idea what is happening in America. It is completely divorced from reality, devoid of any understanding. And you know, they always say that the organization reflects the leader. Well, they've got a feckless, pathetic, completely out to lunch leader, and that has completely permeated this White House, if you can call it that.
So at this point, it's hard to imagine how much worse the situation could get. In that case, the question I always return to, and you are a guy who's worked on so many campaigns, not just in the White House. Your political sense is fine-tuned. Is there not a point, if you look at the cargo ships off L.A., you look at the 2 million illegal aliens, you look at the 4 million people who resigned from their jobs last year, you look at the inflation, you look at everything to do with national security, with Afghanistan. Is there no point at which Biden becomes an albatross around the neck of the Democrats, or are they just too afraid to have the cackler in the Oval?
It's happened already. Look at Virginia.
Yeah.
Terry McAuliffe is losing to Youngkin in a race where Biden won by 10 points.
But hang on, Boris.
Okay?
Boris, it's not just that, Youngkin has a shot. Did you ever think that Terry McAuliffe would actually publicly state that the Democrat president is the reason that he might lose Virginia?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
But yet our country is controlled by Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and BioNTech. And therefore, we're not even allowed to have a conversation about ivermectin. But the few people that are free speech warriors like Joe Rogan, he does not let up. Cut 55, and then we'll go through all 3 cuts here. And this is, by the way, if you have not listened to this podcast discussion with Sanjay Gupta, it's incredible. Because maybe Sanjay Gupta thought that they were going to have a nice little conversation about why people need to wear masks. I don't know what he was thinking going on Joe Rogan's show. But Joe is mad. And good for Joe. Joe Rogan asked Sanjay Gupta, does it bother you that CNN lied about me? Cut 55.
Does it bother you that the news network you work for out and out lied? Just outright lied about me taking horse dewormer.
They shouldn't have said that.
Why did they do that?
I don't know.
You didn't ask? You didn't think that was you're the medical guy over there.
I didn't ask. I should have asked before coming on your podcast.
But they did it with such glee.
No,
yes,
Joe.
They did. I watched.
Gorgeous. I want to frame that. Because because we see this little shriveling of a weak human, Sanjay Gupta. I should have asked. I didn't know. You understand that these media reporters have never been called out before? I think Sanjay Gupta was there to promote a book. I don't think it's doing very well after that. I think he has a new book, like COVID War Zero or something. I really think it's called World War COVID. I think that's the name of the book. And so CNN, he's the medical guy there. And so Joe says, you're the medical guy there. What do you mean? And Joe Rogan doesn't give up. He's a dog with a bone, everybody. He says, wait a second. It should bother you. It's a lie on your network, and it's your conscience of it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border. Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Religion. It's not just about saying I have a right in this country to not have the government not allow me to go to church, but also that the government cannot compel me to participate in any sort of event, including a vaccine, by the way, that goes against my sincerely held religious beliefs. And so it should just be a matter of course that if you have a conscious objection, then you can say, I, as a Christian, as a Muslim, as a Jew, as any sort of religion, I mean, this covers all religions, by the way, all faiths, all sincerely held beliefs, you should be able to say, I decline to be coerced into participation. But what we're seeing is that a lot of employers are not only requiring a lot of information for people to say, well, you have to justify your religious exemption. We're also seeing that they want this so-called, what they're calling an interactive process. That's basically an interrogation. I have clients right now that they have filed for a religious exemption on the basis of we're pro-life, that's what the Bible teaches, and I cannot take this vaccine. And the Human Resources Department, from the legal counsel of these employers, want to sit down and basically interrogate them and say, is this really a sincerely held religious belief? And they're using this as a pretext to try to deny religious exemptions. It's absurd, and I hope that when there are more lawsuits filed, like just today, in Texas, United Airlines was forbidden from enforcing their vaccine mandate against employees who are claiming a religious exemption. So we're already seeing that the courts are protecting this, but hopefully it'll be more than just Texas.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
They lied and said
say?
I was taking horse dewormer. First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor.
Yeah.
Along
They
with
shouldn't have said
a
it was
bunch of other medications.
If you got a human pill, because there were people that were taking the veterinary medication, and you're not, obviously. You got it from a doctor, so that it shouldn't be called that. Ivermectin can be a very effective medication.
Did you see how uncomfortable he was? See, leftists aren't used to pushback, and that's exactly what Joe Rogan gave them, pushback. They're used to existing in these bubbles. They all think alike. They all talk alike. I'm not even sure that they all believe the same thing, but they're so cowardly that they just live to impress each other.
Dude.
Within these bubbles.
Dude.
Yeah, so let me tell you something. This guy, Sanjay Gupta, I've watched him a couple of times on CNN. I've watched some clips, and I tried to, just try to stomach through it, honestly. I don't have a lot of respect for Sanjay Gupta because I believe that he deceives a lot of people as well. I believe CNN does that. And first off, the drug Ivermectin, We know that it's a human drug. He knows that it's a human drug.
Dude.
And Joe Rogan, my goodness, called him out on it.
Dude.
And it's a good thing. And by the way, let me correct the record. The medicine for animals is called neuromectin, not ivermectin. So
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour. Hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt. Not in the Beltway today. I'm in California, so it's early. I'm flying back to the Beltway later today, having spent last evening with Brett Baer talking about his new book, To Rescue the Republic. I'm joined now by another Beltway denizen, Michael Shear, is White House correspondent for the New York Times. Good morning, Michael. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you, Hugh.
Last night, Brett received a couple of questions about the president's health, which, of course, he did not respond to because it would be speculative. But he did point to an exchange between Jen Psaki and Brian Karim from Friday, which I want to play for you. Perhaps you were there. Cut number 6.
He will.
How soon? Do we know?
Don't have an update for you, but will soon. I promise you, Kelly asks about this all the time.
Yeah.
She's keeping us on our toes.
Thank you.
So she throws Kelly O'Donnell under the bus for asking about the president's health daily, and Brian Karim gets, don't worry, we'll get back to you. What do you know about this? I actually wasn't even aware that the president hadn't done the annual health release thing.
Yeah, what I know about it is just what I've, experienced in the briefing room for the past, being there on and off for the past 7 or 8 months, which is that, we in the press corps have continued to ask, when is it going to happen? And Psaki has continued to say repeatedly, it will happen. He is going to have, the sort of regular presidential checkup that all presidents have, and it hasn't happened yet. And what to sort of make of it is sort of unclear. I mean, I think, one of the things that I believe as a reporter, and as a reporter who's covered the White House for almost, 11 plus years, is that I think it's important for presidents, all presidents, to be transparent about their health, about what is going right and wrong with their health, because frankly, they're the ultimate servant to the American people, and the American people deserve to know if there are issues, what those issues are, and what the president is doing to take care of them, and so as a reporter. I think Kelly O'Donnell is doing exactly what she should be doing, which is to regularly ask. Others of us have done the same, and I think we'll keep doing it.
So what is the standard practice? You've been covering the White House for a long time, and I know that there's an occasional health story. There's sometimes a huge story, as when President Trump got COVID and had to go to Walter Reed, or when I was in the White House counsel's office when President Reagan had colon surgery. That's a big story that no one can miss. What's the standard operating procedure for a president?
Well, so you're right. There are the acute events that we cover, and presidents are. I mean, I don't know if there are any that have ever hidden those kinds of acute events because they're pretty obvious. The standard is an annual checkup that a president has once a year, in which they go to Walter Reed Medical Center, which is run by the military and is the sort of hospital where presidents get checked up. They go to get a full physical with all of the tests and evaluations of what their cholesterol level is, what their how the heart is operating or whatever, and typically will at some point after that release a letter from the president's doctor describing the medications that they take, describing any issues, whether they're overweight, whether they're diabetic, whatever issues there are. They and we all saw some of the more comical releases of that kind during the Trump years when, the doctor was saying he's the best person in health for, could live to be 200 years old or what have you. I mean, there were some oddities, but even Donald Trump in those years, provided that. Now, to be fair, Biden hasn't been in an office a full year yet. So, I mean, I don't know that you can sort of say he's hiding it. It's just it hasn't happened yet.
I just don't know when the standard practice is. Apparently, there isn't a standard practice.
I don't remember. I don't remember thinking, oh, it happens every mid-March or something. I mean, I think that's a very personal thing. We all sort of have our physicals scheduled at different times, and so I think if I don't remember there being a specific time of the year that it always.
Yeah, I always do it on my birthday. It's always in February, and so I wonder if he has. Okay, that's what I was curious about that. Now I want to go to a Jen Psaki Whopper yesterday, and were you in the press room yesterday?
Yes, I was. And let me
play. I want. Do you know what I'm going to guess?
I don't know. I think.
Okay, it is cut number 17.
Can you comment on reports that China tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile over this summer to the surprise of U.S. officials? Are these accurate, and do these raise concerns about China's nuclear capability?
Well, I know Secretary Austin, I should say, was asked this question this morning and addressed it, but I'm not going to comment on the specific report. I can say and would echo what he said, which is generally speaking, we've made clear our concern about the military capabilities that the PRC continues to pursue. And we have been consistent in our approach with China. We welcome stiff competition, but do not want that competition to veer into conflict, and that is certainly what we convey privately as well.
We welcome stiff competition, caught the eye of every person who follows nuclear weapons, and especially hypersonics, Michael Shear. Did that sound like a clunker off of your ear when you heard it?
Yeah, it did. I mean, welcoming stiff competition is what you normally think of in terms of perhaps, development of consumer technology or something that that doesn't have national security implications. It's hard to imagine the administration truly welcoming stiff competition when it comes to development of nuclear weapons or advanced deployment systems of nuclear warheads. I mean, it's that seemed to me to be an odd way of phrasing that for sure.
So does the press corps generally get, in your opinion, Michael, the significance of the orbiting of a hypersonic off of a Long March rocket? It is a game changer at the Sputnik moment. Does the White House press corps get that?
Probably. I mean, it depends on what you mean by the White House press corps. There are certainly people in the White House press corps, and I don't actually necessarily consider myself one of them, who are more expert, more closely follow the kind of national security implications of this kind of development, and really follow the kind of daily developments of that part of the world. The White House press corps were a bunch of generalists, right? Some of us know more, in my case, for example, about immigration, right? I wrote a book about immigration. Other people might know, more about congressional legislation or gun policy or whatever. And so I think that sometimes when these kinds of things come up in the briefings, I think we all try to keep abreast of what's going on in the world, but we're not going to catch at that moment everything. I think what you hope is I work at a news organization, for example, that has a broad range of people who have really dived deep into all different subjects, and so you hope that by the end of the day, the people who who might kind of understand more deeply the significance of that kind of thing have sort of noticed it, and that the paper as a whole, the organization as a whole, doesn't miss the significance.
Now, when Sputnik went up, no American was unaware by the end of that day that there's a little spherical satellite. So, a hypersonic, which travels at 5 times the speed of sound, being launched and orbiting the Earth and coming within a couple of dozen miles of its intended, means we've been lapped. Not only lapped, we've been lapped a couple of times on a critical technology. And it ought to start a scramble. It ought to evoke something from the White House other than Secretary Austin said this, and we welcome the stiff competition. Will she be back? We got a minute left, Michael. Do you think that this will have? We had the Colin Powell passing yesterday. Maybe she was just not on her game, but will it be a matter of, or do you expect it to be a matter of focus this morning?
Maybe. I mean, sometimes it takes a little time for this kind of thing to sink in, as you say, both at the White House, but also among reporters. Sometimes we, it takes a little bit of, understanding of what something really means before we kind of get it. So maybe it'll come back today and play a more prominent role.
Michael Shear, I hope so. I'll have Senator Cotton on at the bottom of the hour to talk with him about it on the House. Maybe the Democrats would actually add some Columbia-class spending into the 1.5 trillion minimum that they're about to blow with none on defense. We'll see. Michael Shear, the New York Times, always a pleasure. Follow him on Twitter at Shear M. At Shear M on Twitter. I'll be right back, America, on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Thank you, Mike.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
It's not just about saying I have a right in this country to not have the government not allow me to go to church, but also that the government cannot compel me to participate in any sort of event, including a vaccine, by the way, that goes against my sincerely held religious beliefs. And so it should just be a matter of course that if you have a conscious objection, then you can say, I, as a Christian, as a Muslim, as a Jew, as any sort of religion. I mean, this covers all religions, by the way, all faiths, all sincerely held beliefs. You should be able to say, I decline to be coerced into participation. But what we're seeing is that a lot of employers are not only requiring a lot of information for people to say, well, you have to justify your religious exemption. We're also seeing that they want this so-called, what they're calling an interactive process. That's basically an interrogation. I have clients right now that they have filed for a religious exemption on the basis of we're pro-life, that's what the Bible teaches, and I cannot take this vaccine. And the Human Resources Department, from the legal counsel of these employers, want to sit down and basically interrogate them and say, is this really a sincerely held religious belief? And they're using this as a pretext to try to deny religious exemptions. It's absurd, and I hope that when there are more lawsuits filed, like just today, in Texas, United Airlines was forbidden from enforcing their vaccine mandate against employees who are claiming a religious exemption. So we're already seeing that the courts are protecting this, but hopefully it'll be more than just Texas.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
They lied
What did
and
they
said
say?
I was taking horse dewormer. First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor.
Yeah.
Along
They
with
shouldn't have said
a
it was
bunch
horse.
of other medications.
If you got a human pill, because there were people that were taking it, the veterinary medication, and you're not, obviously. You got it from a doctor, so that it shouldn't be called that. Ivermectin can be a very effective medication.
Did you see how uncomfortable he was? See, leftists aren't used to pushback, and that's exactly what Joe Rogan gave them, pushback. They're used to existing in these bubbles. They all think alike. They all talk alike. I'm not even sure that they all believe the same thing, but they're so cowardly that they just live to impress each other.
Dude.
Within these bubbles.
Dude.
Yeah, so let me tell you something. This guy, Sanjay Gupta, I've watched him a couple of times on CNN. I've watched some clips, and I tried to, just try to stomach through it, honestly. I don't have a lot of respect for Sanjay Gupta because I believe that he deceives a lot of people as well. I believe CNN does that. And first off, the drug Ivermectin We know that it's a human drug. He knows that it's a human drug.
Dude.
And Joe Rogan, my goodness, called him out on it.
Dude.
And it's a good thing. And by the way, let me correct the record. The medicine for animals is called neuromectin, not ivermectin. So not only is CNN lying about it, they don't even have the decency to look up the correct drug for you. This is why we cannot trust the mainstream media. They just lie.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you so much for listening to the Hugh Hewitt Show. AndrewandTodd.com are great sponsors of this program, and they sponsor this market update. Yesterday, if you're just tuning in, the Dow dropped 36 points yesterday. The S&P went up 15. The NASDAQ went up a whopping 124 points, almost 1%. Overseas this morning, we have very little movement. France is now down 0.01%. Germany's up a little bit. Britain's up a little bit. That tells us nothing about what will happen today. But the 10-year Treasury is at 1.584%. So AndrewandTodd.com can only get you one of these great rates if you move before that thing goes above 2%. Then the 30-year will definitely be in the 3.5s. The 30-year fixed mortgage is what the touchstone is for people who are buying or refinancing a house. They want to know how much does it cost over 30 years to buy a house, which is the American dream, despite the Democratic attempt to destroy it by ending a stepped-up basis, but that's another subject. Andrew and Todd is concerned with getting you into the house or getting your money out of the house in case you need it for an emergency, to expand the house, to pay for college. Your house is your bank. Before you go to the bank for a loan, go to your house. Before you buy a car on credit, go to your house. You'll get a better rate. You just will. The money has never been cheaper than the money you'll get out of your house now, but you will not access it unless you go to 888-888-1172 and talk to one of the great people at AndrewandTodd.com. 888-888-1172. Let me also remind all of you that this is the month in which we raise money to protect our liberties, because in the month that the Supreme Court returns to begin hearing cases, Alliance Defending Freedom, I think the single greatest legal defense fund in America, does the most work, represents the most people, has 75 attorneys on staff, 3,300 affiliated attorneys across the United States, and they take all their clients for free. If your religious liberty is threatened, if your free speech is threatened, the Alliance Defending Freedom will be there for you. As one of their vice presidents tells us, Matt just gets right to the heart of it.
One day it may be your grandmother or your business that comes under attack because you wanting to operate consistent with your faith. And maybe your kid's religious school comes under attack for wanting to teach kids the biblical values that you hold so dear. ADF is always there to stand with people to make sure that their rights are not trampled, that their freedom is always protected, both locally, statewide, and ultimately at the U.S. Supreme Court.
Matt Sharp is exactly right. So please be generous. I ask you for money for 4 things all through the whole year. One of them is ADF. Every October, I ask you to support ADF because the legal year is beginning. It's when the Supreme Court returns and when we begin to get in clear focus just how important this case will be, this year will be. And I'll talk to Matt next week. But I want you to call 866-359-9644. We have to keep these lawyers in the field. We have to keep ADF growing and expanding. We can go over to HughHewitt.com. Where many of you go, and I'll have, by the way, the transcript and the audio of Senator Cotton on Hypersonics going up there after the break. At the very top, if you just let the banner load, you'll see the Alliance Defending Freedom banner, protect freedom at the very top. Hit that, contribute, be as generous as you can. If it's $5, thank you. If it's $50, thank you. This is great commission work. This is work that allows people to express themselves and pray and worship as they are protected in doing so by the United States Constitution with the first freedom. That's Alliance Defending Freedom banner at the top of HughHewitt.com, or call 866-359-9644. And for the benefit of those of you in Virginia, I just want to remind you that early voting is underway. And remember, this is what Terry McAuliffe thinks about parents. Cut number 10.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
That's exactly right. Cut number 9.
I don't think
Play it
parents
again.
should be telling schools what they should teach.
One more
I don't
time.
think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Terry McAuliffe is bleeding out. As a result, he cut this ad, and this ad is a poker tell that he's going under quickly. Here's his brand new ad, cut number 8.
As parents, Dorothy and I have always been involved in our kids' education. We know good schools depend on involved parents. That's why I want you to hear this from me. Glenn Youngkin's taking my words out of context. I've always valued the concerns of parents. It's why as governor we scaled back standardized testing, expanded pre-K, and invested $1 billion in public schools. I'm Terry McAuliffe, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad because working together, we can give our kids the education they deserve.
Retread Terry is trying to restate what he said and everybody heard, and it ain't working. It just isn't working. Still, you need to get out and vote early. GOP, Democrat, Independents, anyone who cares about schools, vote early in Virginia for Glenn Youngkin. I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
It's not just about saying I have a right in this country to not have the government not allow me to go to church, but also that the government cannot compel me to participate in any sort of event, including a vaccine, by the way, that goes against my sincerely held religious beliefs. And so it should just be a matter of course that if you have a conscious objection, then you can say, I, as a Christian, as a Muslim, as a Jew, as any sort of religion. I mean, this covers all religions, by the way, all faiths, all sincerely held beliefs. You should be able to say, I decline to be coerced into participation. But what we're seeing is that a lot of employers are not only requiring a lot of information for people to say, well, you have to justify your religious exemption. We're also seeing that they want this so-called, what they're calling an interactive process. That's basically an interrogation. I have clients right now that they have filed for a religious exemption on the basis of we're pro-life, that's what the Bible teaches, and I cannot take this vaccine. And the Human Resources Department, from the legal counsel of these employers, want to sit down and basically interrogate them and say, is this really a sincerely held religious belief? And they're using this as a pretext to try to deny religious exemptions. It's absurd, and I hope that when there are more lawsuits filed, like just today, in Texas, United Airlines was forbidden from enforcing their vaccine mandate against employees who are claiming a religious exemption. So we're already seeing that the courts are protecting this, but hopefully it'll be more than just Texas.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
They lied
What did
and
they
said
say?
I was taking horse dewormer. First of all, it was prescribed to me by a doctor.
Yeah.
Along
They
with
shouldn't have said
a
it was
bunch of other medications.
If you got a human pill, because there were people that were taking the veterinary medication, and you're not, obviously. You got it from a doctor, so that it shouldn't be called that. Ivermectin can be a very effective medication.
Did you see how uncomfortable he was? See, leftists aren't used to pushback, and that's exactly what Joe Rogan gave them, pushback. They're used to existing in these bubbles. They all think alike. They all talk alike. I'm not even sure that they all believe the same thing, but they're so cowardly that they just live to impress each other.
Dude.
within these bubbles.
Dude.
Yeah, so let me tell you something. This guy Sanjay Gupta, I've watched him a couple of times on CNN. I've watched some clips, and I tried to, just try to stomach through it. Honestly, I don't have a lot of respect for Sanjay Gupta, because I believe that he deceives a lot of people as well. I believe CNN does that. And first off, the drug Ivermectin, we know that it's a human drug. He knows that it's a human drug.
Dude.
And Joe Rogan, my goodness, called him out on it.
Dude.
And it's a good thing. And by the way, let me correct the record. The medicine for animals is called neuromectin, not ivermectin. So not only is CNN lying about it, they don't even have the decency to look up the correct drug for you. This is why we cannot trust the mainstream media. They just lie.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
We'll see one young lady identify as transgender, and the next thing you know, 6 or 7 young ladies in that same school are now identifying as transgender.
Children taught at age 5 they can create their gender identity, and it's being celebrated.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Every cell of their body that has a nucleus is male or female.
We've now seen parents losing custody of their children if they don't go along with this.
We've all been created XY or XX, so that means there's only 2 genders. And so really the battle is against the creator.
Look for Salem Now in the App
Trending
Store.
now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Have to get your reaction to Peppermint Patty, who was at the podium, who was explaining why, high gas prices, Boris, it's not a problem everywhere, really. Cut 5.
For a range of issues, and we should talk about those, that the American people are, of course, impacted by rising prices of gas in some parts of the country, not all.
Well, Boris, it's okay then, because it's only some parts of the country. Which parts of the country, Boris?
Rumble.com.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely
now on the Larry Elder Show.
Welcome back, America. If you, like the rest of us, read Dimitri Sevastopoulos' article in the Financial Times on Saturday on the launch by China of a hypersonic missile that orbited the globe, taken into space by a Long March missile, you'll be very interested in what Senator Tom Cotton, who joins us now, has to say about that. Good morning, Senator Cotton.
Good morning, Hugh. Good to be on with you.
It's great to talk with you. Now, I know you're a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, so Dimitri's article in the Financial Times may not have shocked you like it shocked me, but what to make of that news?
Well, Hugh, it's a reminder the Chinese Communist Party wants to replace the United States as the world's dominant economic and military superpower so they can call the shots, so they can dictate to the United States what our policies will be around the world and who we can and cannot support, and that they can hold all of the United States at risk with the threats of nuclear annihilation.
How significant is a hypersonic in space?
Pretty significant, Hugh. Again, it's not shocking that the Chinese have been working on these hypersonic missiles. That's been known for a while, as is the United States. We're still more advanced than China is, but China, as they are in so many other cases, and their military buildup is closing the gap. The main difference, for probably the purpose of your audience, Hugh, between a hypersonic glide missile and a ballistic missile is that hypersonic glide missiles are designed to evade ballistic missile defenses. Ballistic missiles follow a normal trajectory. It's just like if you watch a crime procedural drama and they talk about the ballistics of a bullet. Same thing with a rifle. Same thing with a missile. It goes up, it comes down in a predictable pattern. That's what allows missile defense to work. Hypersonic glide vehicles are able to move at a much faster rate of speed and to take evasive or unpredictable maneuvers. So it's not surprising that China is pursuing these because they want to be able to strike and hold at risk all of the continental United States.
Now, the only response to hypersonics is either mad, mutual assured destruction by having our own that can do at least as much as theirs can, or an undetectable, indestructible nuclear deterrent, such as the Columbia class might present, or directed energy weapons, which I understand are at least 5 years away. Does this announcement or this scoop make it more likely that the Democrats will pause in their rush to spend at least $1.5 trillion and put some of that in the national defense? Tom Cotton?
Well, Hugh, I wish that were the case, but frankly, the Democrats have been the party of military weakness for decades now, going back to the Vietnam War and then Jimmy Carter and on through Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden. Like clockwork, when Democrats take power, they cut the military and they waste money on welfare programs and on their clients and their patrons. So you would think that China conducting such a rapid military buildup would have been a wake-up call to the Democratic Party for a long time. Just not the case, though, Hugh. They don't understand that strength is what matters in foreign policy because only the strong can survive in a dangerous world. And for that matter, only the strong can protect the weak and only the strong can afford to be merciful.
Now, am I not correct that any single Democrat or Angus King, independent from Maine who caucuses with him, and I like Governor King, Senator King a lot, or Jack Reed, who is allegedly a hawkish kind of, could not any single Democrat insist that part of this massive fire hose of additional spending they are poised to pour out on the United States include Columbia-class funding or hypersonic or directed energy weapon funding?
Yes, Hugh, in principle, you are correct because the Democrats only have a 50-50 Senate controlled the agenda only by virtue of Vice President Harris's tie-breaking vote. But for any Democrat, even those you mentioned who are serious at times about our national security, to hold up the Democrats' massive welfare bill and Green New Deal to demand more military spending would be about as popular in the Democratic Party as holy water is to vampires.
But, you know, at some point, well, maybe not at some point. Let me play you Jen Psaki yesterday for our audience who has not yet heard. I played it a couple of times. She gets a question on the hypersonics. Cut number 17, Jen Psaki at the White House yesterday.
Can you comment on reports that China tested a nuclear-capable hypersonic missile over the summer to the surprise of U.S. officials? Are these accurate, and do these raise concerns about China's nuclear capability?
Well, I know Secretary Austin, I should say, was asked this question this morning and addressed it, but I'm not going to comment on the specific report. I can say and would echo what he said, which is generally speaking, we've made clear our concerns about the military capabilities that the PRC continues to pursue. And we have been consistent in our approach with China. We welcome stiff competition, but we do not want that competition to veer into conflict, and that is certainly what we convey privately as well.
Now, Senator Cotton, we welcome stiff competition has never exactly been the Democratic line on arms control and nuclear weaponry. But if we're going to have stiff competition, it's going to take some money. So what is it? Are we giving up or are we going to compete?
Hugh, first off, I'd like to address this common rhetorical turn of Joe Biden's administration. The president himself has said on numerous occasions that we welcome the competition or we're not afraid of vigorous competition. Hugh, this is not like some Olympic matchup of figure skaters or basketball teams where you go out and you compete in a game and then you all shake hands and hug on the medal stand afterwards. This is a struggle for mastery of the world in which life or death are the stakes. So for these Democrats to keep saying we welcome the competition is the height of folly. We don't welcome the competition. We'll see who the best team is, and maybe we'll play a best-of-7 series the way they're doing in Major League Baseball right now. We want to beat China. China is waging a Cold War against us. Part of that Cold War is the military buildup, not just these hypersonic glide missiles, but the new missile silos they're building in western China, fortifying their air force and naval capabilities just across Taiwan on the Taiwan Strait. These are all of a piece with their efforts to replace the United States as the world's dominant superpower. And it's time to get rid of this idea that it's just a friendly competition in a game and face the facts that we have to win this Cold War. Otherwise, we will lose it by default.
Some Democrats are in love with the rise and fall of great powers theory, that there must be a handing of the baton off every 100 years or so between Great Britain and the United States, or now between the United States and the CCP. That is actually dire, because they are not committed to what we're committed to. They're not even in the same playing field, Senator Cotton. Am I wrong in that? I don't think I'm being hyperbolic.
Well, Hugh, a lot of these Democrats in Congress are Maoists, so maybe they are fine with the rise of the Chinese communist power. But, to borrow from your Friday Hillsdale with Hugh conversations, many Democrats are deeply influenced by German historicism and this idea that history has a capital H and it's determined by mechanistic forces, and therefore there must be a changing of the guard, so to speak, of great powers. That is not the way the world works. It is influenced and directed by human choices here and in China and elsewhere in the world, and that decline is a choice. And if America declines and China replaces it, it won't be because there were some kind of mechanistic, deterministic forces dictating that. It'll be because leaders in the United States made the wrong choices over a number of years.
Now, Senator Cotton, you've got the three key committees: Judiciary, Armed Services, and Intel. This is being presented as a surprise that China's launched by a Long March missile of a hypersonic into space, and it did a global orbit and hit within a couple dozen miles of its target. Is it a surprise to our DARPA intellectuals, do you believe? We know that hypersonics, the United States has about 7 different kinds under development, but I don't know that we've actually tested any in space.
Hugh, I wouldn't say that it's a shocking surprise. We invest a lot of money in determining the military capabilities of our adversaries. Consistently in the Cold War with Soviet Russia, that was the intelligence that was best, was assessing military capabilities. We're much weaker at assessing the intentions of foreign leaders, in part because they keep those intentions very closely held. Nor is it, I wouldn't say what some people call this a Sputnik moment. The thing that was shocking about the Sputnik moment is it demonstrated a capability that the United States did not then have. That's not the case, as you point out, with hypersonic glide vehicles. We are also rapidly trying to build up that capability, and we're still doing a better job of it than any country in the world. But it is, again, a reminder that China is not simply building defensive weapons to protect itself, to peacefully integrate into the world. They want to dominate the world order and replace the United States as the world superpower. We cannot allow that to happen.
There was an article by Ross Douthat in the Sunday New York Times, Senator Cotton, that James Bond's newest movie, the fifth in the Daniel Craig turn at 007, or not 007, depending on how one reads the movie, left one with the impression that China didn't exist. There is no mention of China, not in any of the 5 Bond movies made by Daniel Craig, except with Shanghai as a backdrop and another fleeting backdrop shot. As opposed to the original Bond franchise was built on Russian being a menace, the Soviets being a menace. Do you think that's purposeful on Hollywood's part, just like the NBA silence on Hollywood is purposeful?
No question, Hugh. Hollywood is filled with shameful communist bootlickers who are desperate to have access to Chinese movie theaters, and therefore you never see movies with Chinese bad guys, unlike, as you said, during the Cold War with Soviet Russia. And it's not just Hollywood, you think about it. Except for Fox, since they spun off their movie studio, every major news channel in America is owned by or affiliated with a movie studio. ABC and Disney, NBC and Universal, CBS and Paramount, CNN and Warner. Do you think they report the news straight on China? Or do you think the word has come down from on high that you can't be too tough on China, otherwise we can't get our new animated movies into Chinese movie theaters?
Actually, I'd never thought of that before, Senator. You're making me... So every major news organization in America has an interest in China accepting their product from their theaters.
Every major TV news channel, the 3 major networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, which is their NBC's affiliate, and CNN, are all owned by or affiliated with a major movie studio. The only news channel for which that's not the case is Fox, since they spun off 21st century or 20th century Fox years ago. So do you seriously think the corporate executives, those companies, allow their news channels to report the news straight on the Chinese Communist Party when they're trying to get their latest James Bond movie into Chinese theaters, or trying to get their latest Disney animated movie in Chinese theaters? Give me a break.
Have you ever held a hearing? That's fascinating. I don't know that the American. I don't even know if that's in the public interest for a news channel to have a movie relationship, something that is revenue dependent upon. I don't know that that's in the public interest. I don't know what you can do about it. But has there ever been a hearing on it?
No, we haven't had hearings about it. I mean, I've taken great efforts. I put out a big report earlier this year on what I call the China lobby, which is the vast influence peddling that China has across our country, not just in Hollywood and the media, but also in big business, all of whom want access to the Chinese market, many of whom source their products in China. University presidents and college presidents across the country that depend in no small part for revenue from full-rate Chinese-paying exchange students. The China lobby is vast and pervasive in this country, and it's something we have to understand and that we have to confront and defeat because it exerts a baleful influence on our foreign policy directed towards the Chinese Communist Party.
It's also a lobby now trying to downplay what the hypersonic breakthrough means for them. Senator Tom Cotton, always a pleasure. Thank you, Senator. Great to catch up with you on this most important of issues. We will transcribe and post that interview with Senator Cotton. I want to remind everyone, take your relief factor with you before you go out today, especially if you're going to go out and vote early for Glenn Youngkin today. If you're going to go stand in line for a while, and the lines are long in Youngkin country, which is pretty much everywhere that isn't a suburb of D.C., and even in D.C., you see a lot of Youngkin signs. ReliefFactor.com will power you through standing in line or walking in line or walking to the polling booth. Early voting available in every county in Virginia. Make sure you get there early and take your Relief Factor before you head off if you're going to hike to there or run to there or bicycle to there. Just anything, even getting in and out. Josh Kraushaar is next. I'm going to ask him about the Kelly O'Donnell and Jen Psaki battle over the president's health. Stay tuned.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Have to get your reaction to Peppermint Patty, who was at the podium, who was explaining why, high gas prices, Boris, it's not a problem everywhere, really. Cut 5.
For a range of issues, and we should talk about those, that the American people are, of course, impacted by rising prices of gas in some parts of the country, not all.
Well, Boris, it's okay then, because it's only some parts of the country. Which parts of the country, Boris?
Oh, yeah. So there's that 50. Remember, Obama thought there was like 62 states. So it's probably those 12 states or whatever it was. Those are the parts of the country they're referring to.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
These powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Joe Rogan is a good man. Joe Rogan's a fun person. I don't agree with him on everything. I have to say this every time because I get these emails from people. Charlie, how dare you? Like, what are you, Greta Thunberg? Look, Joe Rogan has a different worldview on certain things, but he loves freedom and he loves his country. He's willing to speak out about it. He has been phenomenal on the lockdowns, on the vaccine, on masks. I had a chance to meet Joe Rogan about a month ago in Los Angeles. And Joe Rogan, right when I met him, we posted it on Instagram, and the picture we said has Ivermectin boys, and it went totally viral because you're not allowed to say that. And so Joe Rogan, of course, took Ivermectin after getting the Fauci virus and made a rapid turnaround.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Why don't we talk about Southwest Airlines, which has been in the news very recently.
Basically, Southwest had to cancel over 1,000 flights, and they claimed initially that it was for the weather, and a lot of them were actually out of Florida, and ironically, I was actually out speaking at a conference in Miami, and it was beautiful weather when I flew out on Sunday. So this was, of course, not weather related. They're trying to claim that it wasn't for pushing back against the vaccine mandates. But what a lot of people are speculating, and what I think there is some merit to, is that there is a group now of pilots who are saying we are refusing to be coerced by our employer to take the vaccine. And in fact, the Union of Southwest Pilots has filed a lawsuit in the Federal District of Texas. What's interesting, Eric, is that traditionally conservatives have been kind of anti-union for a lot of really good reasons.
Up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, the final segment of today's Hugh Hewitt Show. If you want to get the highly concentrated Hugh Hewitt podcast, go over to Hugh Hewitt on iTunes or Spotify. The interview with Hugh Hewitt will also be up at iTunes, Spotify, and Salem Podcast Network. Today I conclude with Josh Kraushaar of the National Journal. Hotline Josh to you if you follow him on Twitter. Good morning, Josh.
Good morning, Hugh.
I have been talking all morning about the new Terry McAuliffe ad in which he says, "Don't believe Glenn Youngkin. He's lying about me, taking me out of context." It's a pretty old rule, Josh, that if you're talking about the other guy in the last 2 weeks of a campaign, it hadn't gone well for you.
Yeah, Hugh, you followed so many campaigns over the years that is a telltale sign of a campaign that's struggling to calibrate its message in the final few weeks of an election. It's not a good sign. I mean, if you live in Virginia, you've seen ad after ad slamming McAuliffe on education, slamming McAuliffe on this debate comment he made saying that parents should be secondary to school boards and school administrators. And he had not changed his position. He had doubled down, tripled down, underscored that in many interviews. I saw him last week, said the same thing. And now they're up with an ad trying to clarify his remarks. McAuliffe says they were taken out of context at the debate in this advertisement. But look, I mean, education is the number one issue in my reporting on the Virginia governor's race. This is something that's not just rallying the Republican base, but it's moving some moderate voters in the suburbs towards the Republican side. And I think McAuliffe now sees that. I wrote a column just about school closures. The fact that McAuliffe didn't realize school closures were an issue when he announced his campaign last year in front of a school that was closed and didn't mention anything about reopening schools or coming up with a plan last year to reopen schools. And then later on, he kind of adjusted as his own supporters, as his own voters saw that was an issue that was resonating with a lot of voters. He's been slow on the uptick in realizing these issues have resonance in Virginia, and I think it's going to be a big problem for him in the closing stretch.
There is also behind this, in fact, let's play the clip, cut number 9. This is what Terry McAuliffe said.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Now, that's just the icing on a cake of a year of closure and now incoherence in COVID policy, Josh Kraushaar. I don't know if you know, but even within single districts, policies vary from school to school about exposure, time off, when do you begin counting, and children are being held out of school sometimes for 3 and 4 weeks, and they haven't even been sick. They've just had an exposure to someone who's sick, and it's a repeat of last year's nightmare. And Ralph Northam's doing nothing about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a school, but it's a county by county decision, and I know in Fairfax County there's been a lot of frustration about some of these specific policies. I think there's a grab bag of issues that parents are concerned about. Some of it's about curricular decisions, age inappropriate curriculum on gender identity. That's become a big issue in parts of the state. You have issues with getting rid of the number one school in the country is in Virginia, one of the top magnet schools in the country. And just this past year during the pandemic, they got rid of the admissions test. They totally revamped the standards for getting into the Thomas Jefferson Science and Technology School in Fairfax. And a lot of Democratic parents, that was sort of a gateway drug to seeing some of the other challenges and problems with the state's education decision making. So there's a whole grab bag of issues. When McAuliffe had that soundbite at the debate saying that parents should be sort of subservient to the school board, it hit a nerve with not just conservative voters, but a lot of frustrated parents across the state. And he's clearly getting traction with that line of attack.
Now, Judge Kraushaar, I've been looking eagerly, and I cannot find any analysis of the early vote. Have you seen anything that tells us where it is, who it's for, any kind of analysis of the early vote?
Yeah, so some important context. Virginia never had real early voting until last year, so there's not much of a baseline to really compare it to. There hasn't been a whole lot of early voting, certainly compared to 2020. there has been more turnout on the Republican districts, the Republican jurisdictions. But we're talking about a very small sample, and I think it's a little foolhardy to extrapolate, especially in Virginia, the early voting numbers. But the one thing I think that's clear is that there's more engagement and intensity on the Republican side of the aisle. Republicans don't usually vote early. There are disproportionate numbers of them voting early in this election. So that's the only real sign I think we can see that there is a lot of Republican excitement, a lot of Republican engagement.
Okay, give me your thumb. You know, when you put the thumb up and you try and get the line of the green. I watch the Youngkin Twitter feed and I watch the McAuliffe Twitter feed. Youngkin's got great crowds. Now I voted for Glenn Youngkin. People can adjust for the lie of my green. I'm a Youngkin supporter. What do you see in terms of the enthusiasm, the campaign ability of both candidates?
Yeah, I was with both campaigns this past week. I was with Youngkin yesterday. His message, his stump speech has gotten a lot better since when I first saw him a couple months ago. So he's definitely hitting his stride. He's really found on education a message that seems to be resonating with a lot of voters. You know, the thing with McAuliffe that I find fascinating is that his campaign's closing message, in addition to responding on education, is about Trump. And he's now, you know, there's a new ad that he has up about Charlottesville. I'm not sure that, I mean, even Democratic voters, I'm not sure if Trump and what happened in the past is necessarily the top issue to get them to show up and certainly to win over the persuadable voters out there. This is a bet on, like, Trump still being the dominant, McAuliffe is betting on Trump being the dominant force in this governor's race, and I'm not hearing that from either Democrats or Republicans. So if McAuliffe loses, that's going to be one of the biggest strategic miscalculations, that they went all in on national politics when there are a lot of local issues that are on the front center in minds of Virginia voters.
I think you are absolutely dead on right. Josh Kraushaar, Hotline Josh on Twitter. Retread Terry is trying to retry the Trump message, not working against Glenn Youngkin. We'll keep you posted on that race when I come back tomorrow. Thank you, Josh Kraushaar. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Generalissimo. I'll talk to you back in D.C. tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.